This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Calling to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for September 3rd at 6 p.m. If we could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think they have it in the voting room here.
Things went to the next room, I think, but that's okay.
Black Hampshire Regional's missing. Is
it?
Out in the field.
There we go. Okay, so thank you. Is anybody here for citizen speak? Anybody for anything that's not on the agenda? No? Okay. Well, if not, we have for the first of our presentations. We're starting off again this fiscal year with presentations from the various committees and department heads, and the two on the agenda tonight are Greenway Committee and Park Commission. Toss up. Who? Okay, Aaron, come on up. And we do have a quorum, by the way. Stephen, I think, is coming, but just in case, we're able to go ahead without him anyway. Okay, so just give us your name and who you are.
Just making sure it's on. Sorry, there's a note here.
Green light, yeah.
Aaron Tauscher, I'm the chair of the Greenway Committee, 8 Pomeroy Meadow Extension. I'll give a brief summary and then some of our current priorities. The Greenway Committee is working to repurpose an abandoned rail corridor to a multi-use recreational trail through town. The pathway will be available for walking, cycling, skiing, and other non-motorized activities. The first phase, the current phase of our project, spans from Route 10, where College Highway intersects Brickyard Road near Sheldon's and continues north to Coleman Road, where it meets Easthampton's Manhattan Rail Trail. Completion of this 3 to 3.5 mile corridor will begin to close a critical gap between Easthampton and Westfield, connecting our community to a vast network of trails throughout Massachusetts and Connecticut. Current priorities and activities. So the committee is regularly working with Ty and Bond, and specifically our project manager, Alex Fagnan, on the engineering and design of the path. In November 2023, we hosted our first open information session with the town. We were quite pleased with this. Our unofficial count was 120-ish attendees, I believe. This gave us the chance to provide a status of the project, share what will happen next, and gather feedback from residents and stakeholders from surrounding communities. The meeting seemed well received and marked a major milestone in our project. We do plan to host another informational meeting with the town when the design of the path is recognized by the state at a specific point. This will most likely be in 2025. Engineering is projected to be completed in 2026 as of right now, and our project is on the state's Transportation Improvement Plan, or the tip sheet, currently as an FY28 construction project. Regarding the funding of our engineering work, the committee is happy to report that additional funding has been awarded this year. This award is actually a little bit different. We have had great luck with Mass Trails grants in the past. This year it has come in the form of an ARPA grant. And the exact amount is actually kind of in the works right now. We expect it to be between $120,000 and $135,000 roughly to go towards engineering costs. As always, we're thankful for the support of the Ad Hoc Grants Committee and the Select Board for our grant application work, and the funds we've earned have covered the significant majority of engineering costs to date. So one important item that the committee has investigated throughout the last year has been parking. Opportunity for parking areas along the corridor is slim, we know, and there seems to be no adjacent property clearly available for the taking along our corridor. So we have requested additional funds with our most recent grant application for parking research and work, though unfortunately no additional funds were awarded for that purpose. We understand that parking is being expressed as a critical need by our future path users, though adding traffic and parking in some critical places could strain businesses and residents. So we will continue to work with our project manager and the town, and of course may need to seek additional funding to properly address this priority. An additional variable that has come up with the design of the project so far is the condition of one specific culvert between Coleman Road and Gunn Road. This is specifically the third culvert south of Coleman Road, if you're interested. So during a site visit with Ty and Bond and Mass DOT, the condition of this culvert was assessed, and it seems as if a major repair may be necessary. Our project manager is still optimistic that repair costs would be included in our state construction budget, though we'll continue to monitor this topic as we move forward. Finally, the committee is working to finalize a stance on equestrian use on and adjacent to the future path. So equestrian use has been discussed throughout the past few years, and initially a non-paved path adjacent to the finished paved path was proposed, primarily for a large horse farm right in the middle of this corridor. After a lot of research and discussion, the committee has decided to take the stance and not pursue additional accommodations specifically for horses. This decision came about primarily on safety, but also comes from input from horse owners, from nearby property owners, also some with related experience, as well as direction from Ty and Bond. So we had planned to send a letter to the select board. We actually have copies tonight that Mark can give you. This is just kind of our formal stance on the topic. We would like to ask that the select board review the topic and at least support our decision, host a meeting to discuss it further, or direct otherwise. And we can follow up on that topic, of course, to decide next steps. But we do appreciate just attending to that topic, just to keep our community in the know. Mm-hmm. Future priorities. Regarding future priorities, the committee has been aware of the interest in utilizing land within the rail corridor for a sewer line. As residents, me specifically, I'm interested in the idea. I may be in favor of the idea. However, sewer implementation has not been a part of our project's current scope, and the committee really doesn't feel capable or best suited to proactively lead the charge on this one. So we feel it's really important to not delay the construction of the path currently, but we just wanted to say we will remain focused on the project as is, though we hope to be a helpful resource if need be to any other group investigating this opportunity. Also, the state has provided encouragement on moving forward with the next phase of Southampton's path, which would be continuing south and connecting to Westfield. Right now, the committee is truly focused on advancing the design of our current corridor on the project as is, between Coleman Road and College Highway, and we do not yet feel that we have the mandate to pursue additional work or focus on extension just yet. So more to come on that topic as we move forward. Budgeting status or budgeting concerns. As mentioned previously, the committee has very successfully pursued grant funds throughout the past 4 years at least, earning over $1 million in Mass Trails grants and now ARPA grant funds combined. We project that our current earnings are close to covering the entire projected design and engineering costs, though one additional grant application will likely be necessary in the future. We expect to know the grand total of engineering costs in about 1 year's time. Regarding construction, prior to the pandemic, the state's TIP program, the Transportation Improvement Program, earmarked about $6.5 million for this project's construction. Today, the tip sheet shows construction costs closer to $16.8 million, with construction hopefully starting in FY28. Our project manager expects that construction costs, which will include the removal of rail ties, by the way, to be fully funded by federal funds, so fingers crossed there. While we would like to report that construction could have started sooner, this is what we're faced with, and of course we'll do everything we can to stay on target for FY28. Personnel and staffing. There are currently just 6 volunteers on the committee. Since the select board created a formal charge for the committee, we would ideally be operating as a committee of 9. We are working to generate interest in new members through various channels. Admittedly, responses have been slow lately, so we're a little slim. We're coordinating with our Friends of the Greenway group now to try to drum up interest, and we hope that increased membership will help ensure a quorum at meetings, which has been an issue lately, and distribute tasks more evenly among the group. In conclusion, as we advance through this major engineering phase of the project, the committee will keep We'll keep progressing, the committee will work to keep the project progressing consistently and efficiently. We're proud of the funding earned and the work that we've done for the community to date. We look forward to the next opportunity to provide the town with a major engineering update and of course gather additional input, and we do expect that to be sometime in 2025. As always, the Greenway Committee holds regular meetings that are open to the public, and we can always be reached at greenway@townofsouthampton.org. That is it from me. Can I answer any questions?
Yeah, no, I think this is good. Thank you. That's good to have an update. I think we hadn't really caught up with you since that public meeting really in November, which was, I
Right.
agree with you, a very successful meeting up at the school. A lot of good questions and a lot of good answers. So that was good questions. Yeah, Cindy.
Hi. Couple thoughts. Regarding the parking, I will be honest with you, I just came from the state of Vermont, and I went to this beautiful rail trail, and I don't think they have parking all that frequently. And I just wondered, do we have any precedent in the state of Massachusetts about distance and recommendations for integral parking where, I mean, is it really necessary to have some kind of parking along the trail that they're working on now, or what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I do not know if there are standards, as in distance or how many cars should be available in a space per expected users. But you used an interesting word, necessary. I don't think parking is necessary. I think it would be nice. If the community truly doesn't have the space, or if you're bordered by private property or businesses, I don't think that there's a need to provide parking. But I think it would be nice, and I think for either disabled users or users who don't want to travel far to get to a path that's supposed to be advertised as an accessible path, I think it would be silly to not put in some effort or do some research towards parking in a safe, usable place. Or maybe myself, I think about kids. I want to have kids pass by as few cars as possible or as close to a path as possible to use it safely. So we're researching it just for the benefit of simplicity and safety, but we may not end up with a suitable parking space for this particular corridor. So to be determined. I'm not 100% certain. We're going to keep pushing it and do the research now.
Can we do parking on the other side of Coleman Road? I know that the first section of the of the rail trail in Easthampton is actually on Southampton property, and I know people park along Coleman Road. I've done it many times.
Yeah, people park.
There's a phrase for it. Our project manager, Alex, has a phrase for it. It's really just a built-up shoulder. It's kind of that gravel, and it's
Yeah.
parallel to the road. So it might be at its capacity now. I don't think we can add any further because I believe you'll run into property lines or available space. We might be maxed out on space. So I think what's there probably cannot grow unless some land was acquired. And then they've even talked about nose-in parking, I believe, but then backing out onto Coleman, which is a pretty fast-moving road, presents some different issues. So that idea has also been tossed around, though it didn't prove to be a truly available asset that could likely expand beyond what's there now.
Yeah. Well, you might, if I can interject, you might need something down at Coleman, though. I mean, sorry, at Sheldon's, rather.
Yes. Yeah, so Sheldon's is a terminus. I mean, it's where the path will end, and it's close to Route 10. It's going to be a popular place for people to just pop in and want to go, and of course finish and get ice cream. We don't want to interrupt the Sheldon's flow, and we really can't just help ourselves to their parking spaces. We have looked at options there. I know Mark has a lot of information on the other side of what I believe is it's Brickyard Extension. It's that dirt road. We looked into options there, but there's also some dead ends with property designations and space and things like that. So we're truly looking into all options, and if we can find something that doesn't disrupt a business or take property from someone, we're going to
hopefully the next
see it
grant
through.
we can have money in there to really investigate that. It's a shame that it got cut out of this last grant.
Yeah. Yep.
I have another question, if I may.
Sure.
You're talking about building in fiscal year '28. I somehow had in my head it was going to be earlier than that. What happened?
I really hoped it would have been. It sounds like the state is a slow-moving glacier. The engineering team, specifically Alex, is ready to rock and roll. They can turn work around quickly, but apparently it's the handover and how much work is required to satisfy the needs of the state. He has a lot of interesting terms that are well above my head, like bridge assessments and things like that. And then complete streets is involved, so apparently just assessing the decking widths and things like that of the bridge that goes over Gun Road, for example. There's so many hoops to jump through and hurdles to jump over for them to get to the next point to advance things on. So I think that's where the delays are that we're seeing. However, taking all those delays into account and then getting your foot in the door for a construction date, he seems to have some pretty good confidence that FY28, which is, by the way, calendar year 2027, July 2027 through June 2028, that once we're established there, that should be pretty firm. So fingers crossed, we're hoping that delays don't continue. We're hoping that, even though it seems a ways off, that we're fairly firm on that date now.
I just know with every passing year, everything costs more money, everything. You know,
Exactly.
so
Yeah, which is a
your
shame.
colleague has a
Yeah.
comment over there.
Yeah.
Sure,
Mark,
Mark.
come on up. Yeah.
Sorry. Mark Cassis, 19 Fulmer Road, part of the Greenway Committee. So the TIP is interesting in that we were approved for TIP funding for 2027 for the $6.8 million on an old Mass DOT number.
Yeah.
Because it had been so many years, they had to give a new number and go through a whole process. So, and that's where they at least reassessed it at $16.8 million. Something weird came out in this year's TIP. We were on the proposed TIP for 2028 for the $16.8 million. We got dropped between when it was proposed and the final thing. But we're on for the old number for the $6.8 million for 2027, an error, and we've dropped. But we've done our homework since we learned that, and pretty sure it should come through on the next year, but for 2028 for the $16.8 million. But it really didn't turn out exactly
Are our
the way we wanted.
legislators fully informed about?
Well, we didn't push for it when the proposal came out. I think next year we need to push through it, the committee and
Yeah.
select board. But so it should get it, but it's not exactly the way we wanted it to happen.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Good.
can I clarify a
Yeah.
couple other things? So one is the Sheldons was one of the earliest groups to contact us that they were worried about parking in their parking lot. So I think we need to respect their concern.
Right.
They're going to have the benefit of more business, but they don't want it filled with
Sure.
people bicycling. So that's probably the area to me that needs the most addressing. We have Coleman Road, there's some areas on Gun Road, there's parking along the street. East Street, construction should happen about the same time as the Greenway construction happens, and there will be a bike path from along East Street down to Conan Park, so I think we can use that and safely get up to the Greenway connection there, as well as the new property at 123, is that the number? We're hoping ultimately we'll have parking there. So I think it's really the south end of, near Sheldon's, at least for short term, is going to be an issue. And related to that, we talked about things that we need the select board's help with, and one is if we're going to look at possibly purchasing a lease or land close for parking there, who should be starting to look into that and negotiate? It should be the select board, or do you want us as a Greenway Committee to be working on that? Right now, we don't feel like we have a mandate for that,
Right.
so just need a clarification of.
We probably
how
need to
proceed
take a
with
look at the original charge that we did for the Greenway and take a look and see if that needs revision at another meeting.
it. And there's other areas that may require sort of negotiation for land. One is, I think, one of the places that we've talked about, but don't have a specific plan for, is how to connect the Greenway to the Big Y Shopping Plaza, which I think functionally will get people access to food that may not have other transportation. And that may require purchase of a way through some of the back properties if we can't go down Coleman Road. So again, that may be another time when the select board or the town needs to look at options, and there may be a financial decision to purchase land or lease land.
Yeah, Stephen?
Is there a Greenway representative on the Open Space Committee?
Yes.
A formal representation?
Oh,
No, I don't think so, but
Not from
you
the
come
committee.
off
formally.
Those are chosen, the committee doesn't have that, do you?
No, there isn't an appointment from the Greenway Committee on the Open Space Committee, but Mark often comes, and
and
unofficially.
Janet Brown is also.
Oh, is she on the Greenway Committee?
She's a
Oh, I
comment.
apologize, but she's not an appointment. She's appointed from CPC.
Correct.
So
But-
I appreciate
Sorry.
that. And
Sorry, Janet.
incredible contributions from each of you. However, Madam Chair, in light of the conversation you and I had privately, we would need to formalize and arrange in the charter that there be representation at the Open Space Committee. If the Open Space Committee is going to have the sole authority to speak with.
Well, they've got their separate charge, so it wouldn't necessarily mean that we'd have to
Well, it
add.
wasn't my idea, I'm responding to yours.
Okay, yeah, So Open Space Committee in general has got the charge to look for land for acquisition purposes. This, I think, is a little bit different because it's really restricted to the Greenway area from what you're saying. And what I heard was parking, first and foremost.
Parking and
The Westfield part, we don't really know yet. So parking is the main thing, right?
And possibly figure how to connect to Big Y Plaza.
And Big Web Plaza, okay, yeah. So I think, yeah, no, we do need to take a look at the charge for the Greenway and just see what was in there. It's been a few years now since we did that, so we need to just bring it back
Perfect
up
segue.
and see what's in there and see where we can take that. I mean, obviously, the town administrator is involved in any kind of land acquisition. Things that are maybe just, a small spot, like I'm thinking like up at Clearwater, where there's a small area, or at Alice Brown Conservation Area, there's just a small pullover and there's, enough room for 2 or 3 cars. Now, you probably need something a little bit more than that for the Greenway, I don't know. But, I mean, that's part of that discussion, if we can ever get the grant to cover that, because that was part of the idea last year when we put the grant forward, to look at that in more detail, but.
My guess is that would not pass with the state
It might
highway
not.
department.
It might not, yeah. So anyways, yeah, so we'll pull out the charter and take a look at the charge on that. But it sounds like, too, tying into that, we probably need a separate meeting, and not having read your letter here yet, but we may need a separate meeting just to talk about the equestrian part and give some blessing or contradiction or whatever to that.
And I
yeah?
think a formal invitation for the Grindstone Farm.
Yes, absolutely, that's what I would suggest. So that might even be a separate meeting, or we could be, somebody from, a couple people from Select Board could join the Greenway meeting, or we have just a separate meeting on that itself, because I remember the original study had quite a nice presentation about a parallel equestrian path, but
Yep.
as time develops, I mean, in the reality of horses getting spooked and whatever else, it may be.
Briefly, what's in the letter is, 2 of us met with the owners of Grindstone Mountain, and they're
Yeah.
clear they do not want equestrian use of any of the adjacent land.
Okay.
We've spoken with one other horse farm owner. They said it's crazy, it's dangerous to have
Okay.
horses there, and we haven't gotten any other input from anyone else.
Okay.
And behind that, there's a letter from Ty and Bond, sort of
Yeah.
reiterating that it doesn't make
Well, let's
sense.
assume we'll
Okay.
probably try and just schedule a separate meeting to talk about that issue and just be clear on that, so you guys can move forward.
So, Chris, if I could, so I think the parking should take the same approach. It's, they've done their work as a committee, they've rendered it what they think is their opinion, they're looking for us to validate it and to approve the equestrian piece. I think the parking's the same way. Is there truly a need from the committee's point of view? Yes or no? Put together a white paper, right? And then it comes in here, and then we act on that versus having free-for-all for a half hour, trying to wonder who's going out negotiating for land.
Yeah, yeah, and it may be just a matter of whether you have enough information already in your own research on the parking, or whether through the grant that didn't come through, we were looking to have that a little bit more researched. So we can figure that out. But I agree, we need something more formally probably from you guys to react to.
If nothing more, then we need X amount of money to validate this.
Yeah.
All right, because maybe it's a couple $1,000s, I don't know how much was in
Yeah,
that grant
just
to do that study.
To validate your assumptions or whatever, that's an
Right,
idea.
because then when we go to the public, right, when we start having the documentation and all that to build the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
It does raise in my mind a question of how it came up in the first place to have an equestrian path. You don't have to answer that now, but it sounds complex. yeah?
History came from the prior owner, King Oak
Prior owner.
Farm had
Oh,
wanted
I
it.
Yeah.
This is obviously
Yeah.
20-ish years.
Because I believe
ago.
there's land, the horse farm owns land on both sides of the trail,
Yes, okay.
and so, yeah.
And the current owners do not.
And do you view this as an accessible way of recreating in our town? In other words, can somebody in a wheelchair or some kind of, impairment and disability be able to utilize the rail trail? And I ask that because of the parking issue, because there might be a need for an outfitted van that needs more space to park because somebody's going to utilize their electric wheelchair or something like that. So it's a very, and I'm with John, that this needs to, be looked at a little more clearly and carefully. And now you got a little more time, you got a little more, maybe we didn't want a little more time, but we got it. So to do the right thing on this,
And the longer and more difficult is how to proceed with Phase 2 of south of Sheldon's, which again needs to be a
Yeah.
select
And if
board
the-
decision.
And
of
if
how
the,
and when.
if the state is urging you to start looking at that, which I think you told me at one point you weren't looking at right away, Are they going to come forth with more money for us? You know, that's really part of it.
I think they paid a consultant to do the Westfield section from Women's Temperance Parks up to the end of Southampton. So the state paid,
From which park?
well, from Westfield, it's
From the
Women's
Westfield
Temperance
River?
Park, which is north of the Westfield, branch of the Westfield River.
Okay.
Up to the Southampton line. So they decided it's important enough, they paid an outside
yeah?
consultant
Oh,
to
that's
do
Up to
it.
North Road.
I'm not sure if it's north of Valley Road, or I forget
Okay.
exactly, because they presented a map really quickly.
Yeah.
I mentioned north, but that's what they presented they wanted to do, and they paid a consultant to do it. And Alex Fagnan at that, there was a phone meeting that we were there, and was one of the heads of the State Department of, important person at state level. Alex Fagnan said, why don't you help Southampton by actually paying for
There you go.
the planning instead of have
Good
to
for
piecemeal
him.
it. So
Yeah.
that was heard by them. I don't know if they'll act on that.
Yeah, okay.
Kurt Gartner heard that?
Kurt Gardner was at that meeting and sort of sponsored the meeting,
Undersecretary of the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs.
which says it's important for the state.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
That's a good sign.
All right. Good. One last quickie, silly question maybe. Non-motorized activities. I know this issue has come up in other towns. Are we talking electric bikes or no?
E-bikes is a tricky topic.
It's actually not anymore. The state
Oh, there's-
passed that e-bikes, class 1 and 2, are bicycles. So class 3 is ones that are not just throttle oriented, you have to be pedal assist, and it can go over 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
But there's no way that a policeman can tell who's got
Which is
Right,
which,
right.
yeah.
type 1
Yeah.
and type 2. So a lot of the towns have gone to just posting speed limit or ignoring the issue.
Yeah.
But it does allow electric bikes,
Okay.
as well as other electric
Yeah.
motor battery operated
Yeah.
bike things.
I'm sure there'll be many questions coming up when we have your next public meeting, but good. Well, thanks. Any other questions, anybody? No? Thanks, guys.
Good work.
It's very,
Thank you. Nice
very-
report.
very good. Good to give us an update. Perfect. All right, Dylan, come on up. Have the Park Commission, please.
Hi, Dylan Maudsley, 22 Caitlin Way, Chair
Sorry,
of
your last name?
Maudsley.
Maudsley.
Sorry, I'll slow down. I tend to talk a little quick. Good reminder every now and then.
Is an attorney. Said you are an attorney.
It's true.
Go ahead.
We get paid by the word, not by the minute, right? 22 Caitlin Way, Park Commission. We were here last year before you guys, August of last year. Since then, we've completed a few projects that we discussed were under construction at the time. The biggest one, of course, being the Magic for Maddie Playground. I wish we could take more credit for that, but the group that ran that just did an unbelievably stellar job of planning it, designing it, organizing the community build, and it's if you haven't been over there yet, it's absolutely stunning. And they did it's a fantastic addition to our community. It's heavily utilized when I'm over. Whenever I'm over there, there's a lot of kids out playing on it, which is great. The Conant Park court resurfacing was also completed. The tennis courts were recovered. There was a process of crack sealing and a surface coating was placed on those. They were repainted. In addition to the tennis courts, they were lined for pickleball use as well. So with portable courts, I believe there's a total of now 6 total courts they can use. I believe they can use 2 per tennis court when they get those set up. So that's been really nice having that additional space available as well. The basketball courts have also been refinished and relined and have been getting a lot more use as well. I believe one of the co-chairs of the basketball organization in town has been doing some pickup games and pickup leagues in the summer with kids in town too. The splash pad is still under construction. We have the equipment. We do not yet have, we ran out of funds with the timing of the grant in order to get those installed, as well as with the walking path, which is part of that design project for improvements to Conant Park. I'd like to reach out to the ad hoc grant committee now. We're looking at the next cycle. I wasn't quite aware how far ahead these grant cycles are. So when I started looking into it last year, at the beginning of January, we were already past the deadlines for the coming year. So we're getting there now. And I think the park grants are coming back out. So we'll be looking at trying to find some additional funds to be able to get that splash pad installed and finish out that walking path to connect both sides of Conant Park to both College Highway and to Clark Street. Other upgrades, Randall Kemp over at Highway Department replaced a whole bunch of the split rail fencing along Conant Park on College Highway, as well as down at Crossroads Park. Both those fences do look substantially better now. There is still some at the backside of Conant by the pavilion that could use some work, but I think that's something we need to look at of whether fencing is appropriate there, or if we want to look towards a greener approach of doing some hedging for a visual barrier, because it's not really providing any safety. It's where the embankment is along the backside of the park. A split rail fence isn't really a safety measure, it's a visual. So does it make more sense to working on something that could improve the sustainability of the park by using plantings to get that, instead of replacing that fence with just another fence that will need to be replaced down the road. There was a memorial held at Crossroads Park at the Angel Heart statue. Paula Mack generously volunteered, went down, cleaned the statue. It looked really quite nice now. A few donations have come in, so we're working on getting a new paver. I think we're one name away from needing for a new paver for that as well. It's so it's nice that is again getting some use. Up at Labrie Field, one of our goals last year was to start working on the playing surfaces there. Luckily this year, with the weather we've had, with the consistent rain or fairly regular rain, we did not need to again look at the sprinkler system. That is a project we will need to look at down the road. But we were able to apply 2 rounds of fertilizer. We did one at the beginning of the year with a pre-emergent and then a midsummer combined fertilizer. The quality of the playing surface has improved drastically from that. The number of weeds, dandelions has gone down, and I think generally speaking, the quality of grass has been on there. I'd like to work with SYAA this fall and doing a aeration. We have had a volunteer do that last year. Hopefully we can get that done again this year, and then maybe purchasing some seed and adding some seed to it to again help with getting those fields up to a more robust condition, because ultimately the more grass that's on them, the longer they will stay durable and playable. Enrollment numbers are great as usual. We're seeing again a more uptick in sports in town. For this fall, for soccer, we're looking at over 350 participants. That includes the land at Norris as well. These are not, which is not a Parks Commission charge, but that's also included in that. In spring, the baseball had 277 kids playing, and they've got 17 kids on one team in baseball and 35 for softball for the fall as well. So again, great numbers. Baseball and softball, Little League had great turnouts this past year. The girls 8 to 10 team, I believe, were state champions and went on to the regional championships down in Long Island, and the 8-10-year-old boys went to district championships in Westfield. Football, again, is using the field consistent number, 70 to 100 players. Approximately, they're practicing down the backside of Labrie. Looking for upcoming projects, we need to really kind of dig into the Conant Park Playground. Another thing, we'd probably be approaching CPC for, as well as looking for grant funding to kind of get into that. We were using kind of the template of the pricing of the Magic for Maddox. We'd be looking for a similar size, if not probably a different layout so that there's some variety, but a similar size playground to that. So we'd realistically be looking probably between around $300,000 total, I'm guessing, for the removal and replacement of the play structure at Conant Park. The Conant Park Pavilion is also going to need some upgrading. I'd like to reach out to the Lions Club and kind of work with them on that, because that is, their names on it, and I want to make sure that we're working with another great charitable organization in town to make sure we get a good improvement there. Specifically, the bathrooms need some updating. We need some updating to probably the picnic tables and some paint, siding, little stuff like that, just to kind of improve it there.
It'd be nice to enhance the audio system as well, the microphone system.
Sure,
you can only hear it really when you're under the pavilion, but farther out, it's really kind of tough. So that might be a thing that maybe we could figure out some grant money for.
Definitely, we can look into that. There is actually a grant that we were informed of last year, but I think we got the information a week before the grants were due, about specifically programming for cultural programming in Massachusetts. And if we could show the concerts in the park series would be a good usage of cultural money, and we could maybe get a sound system upgrade for that, which would, again, be a really good thing. As part of Conant Park Pavilion 2, the master plan was completed. That will be going up on the website soon, once I find my login information. But that will be going up on the website. That does detail some improvements to Conant Park.
What kind of plan?
Conant Park master plan.
A master plan.
So that includes a number of things. Most of it is not earth-shattering. It's mainly how to make the park more accessible, identifying really more structural issues. The part you can't see, which is really where the most of the work is needed, specifically in the ravines, those embankments need some work. There needs to be some riprap and brought in, and there needs to be some probably tree clearing, as well as some embankment building to make sure that we continue with good runoff, so that we're getting rid of some of that water that's out there. Because part of the problem we have too is that there's water on some of the playing surfaces, and that main field holds a ton of water. So kind of looking at those things, as well as some usability improvements, repairing the bridge that's probably getting near the end of its life that connects the two sides of Conant. Looking at making the spillway, which is between the pond and the playground, that little there was a discussion in that of how to make that more accessible, to be able to access both sides of the park, to make a loop, a walking loop potentially out there. But that's kind of the things that the master plan addressed, and again, that will go up on the website so the town can see it, and we can kind of start addressing those things on a capital improvement side. We're also looking at this coming year, working on kind of going through our bylaw and regulation review and kind of seeing what makes sense and what doesn't. One thing we learned this year was we increased our fees for Western Mass for the usage of the Labrie Field baseball diamond, the large one. And we got pushback from our wood bat leagues, who are really the only users of that field. So we spend a lot of time and money keeping that field in playable condition. It needs some rehabbing. The mound needs to be redone. The infield really needs to be dug out and reclayed. So it needs a good amount of money to get it up. And I found out we are actually now at the top of the price structure for Western Mass. So I'm a little concerned that we're not going to get any usage on that field this year. So we really need to readdress that and either look at improving that field to make it more competitive in town with the other towns, or look at reducing our fees back down to, again, make it more competitive with other neighboring communities. I'd also like to look at our fee structure for pickleball and tennis courts. Right now, we don't have any charge on those. I'm not recommending that we would look at making that a always rentable situation, because it does need to be available for the community as a walk-on user, but potentially blocking out certain times that could be rented for a fee. The hope with that being to offset the cost of our new porta potty that we've brought over and put in that parking lot. We were told by the pickleball users that the library had expressed concerns about facilities usage and really their paper products, and because of the usage over there.
Because the restrooms are locked at Conant,
because the restrooms are locked at Conant.
People were going over to the library, and I think that was causing an issue over there. Yeah.
So we did bring on, we brought in a portable, a porta potty for that side of the park, and I think that's getting used. And but again, the thought is potentially changing our entire structure on that. Right now, each field user is required to provide that, and I'm wondering if it makes more sense to readjust our fee structures, have a facilities fee, and that way we can keep from March until October bathrooms at every park in town, so that there's no concerns about people not having access to a restroom. I think the things that the continuing things that we're looking at now is field space. And again, getting back on page with getting that field house constructed at Labrie. I'm not sure where on the priority list that's going to fall. I think while it would be nice, I think getting our fields in better condition, getting the sprinkler system at Labrie, potentially getting a well installed so that we're not using as much town water to use it, and improving the condition and usability of Conant Park before we look at that might be the priority, but I'm not sure where that's going to fall with what people in town feel is a bigger priority for them. As far as budgeting goes, right now our Conant Park Pavilion rentals are a little over $6,000. That's more or less covering the expenses that we have with cleaning and trash removal from that. So that's basically a break-even proposition. Our field usage has gone towards purchasing fertilizer, the porta potty, and it's going to need to be used probably for some rehabbing throughout the year to get those fields in better condition, including over at Conant, where we do have, again, standing water on those fields. The goal is to remain basically revenue neutral with only small amount coming from the town to cover expenses or things as they pop up. And then, again, come to the town for capital requests on a case-by-case basis so that we can properly budget and expend those out of a one-time usage rather than out of a line item budget.
Right. Good, okay, thanks. Any comments, questions?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a couple. Hi there. Have you become familiar with the open space and recreation plan that our town, certainly the parks falls under that. It's, been written by and approved by our town. It's a necessary part of what we have. You're familiar with it?
Yes.
So I'm part of the Open Space Committee, and I know we're going to look at it a little more intensely and make sure we're doing things consistent with what's in that plan. And I just was wondering if, could I share a copy with you? If you have it already, then that's fine.
This is the one that's from 2008, is that so?
Oh, no, it's been updated. It's 21, and
Okay.
it's going to be updated again in 28, and we have to be able to say what we've done.
Okay.
So it's been a continuous thing. It's what every
It's also on the
municipality
website.
does.
Okay.
Did you say? It's on the website, yeah.
I think I'm familiar with it. It's like a 200-page document.
Well, like 350 pages,
Okay.
yeah.
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 It's on the website under the Select Board, not
Okay.
under the
No, it's under-
Conservation
oh, okay.
Commission. The prior plan is under the Concom. One of our employees had trouble with that.
No, I think,
We can-
well, they should be under.
You want to
the
email me a
reports, but
copy?
Well, I
Or-
can email you a link.
That would be great.
And I have a hard copy.
Yeah.
For me, anyway, it's easier to read a hard copy, but I just want to urge you to become familiar with it and as you look at all these plans you have, which are great, just kind of be thinking along the lines of what had been proposed and, what the goals were and what the particular objectives were that we would put right into that plan. It works better that way, that we know that this is something that was ratified by our town. So that was just a thought, which I'm happy to share with you. Okay, I don't have it coming off my tongue that easily because it's a long thing,
Right.
but.
And that was definitely, so for example, out of that part of that plan was one of the things they looked at was why is the reason you leave town most often, and one of them was spray decks or splash pads, which was the impetus for, that was, I think, the number one thing. So that was the reason why that project, for example, was undertaken. One of the things I talk about was walking and recreation, which was the impetus for the accessible walking path through the park. So absolutely, and that document has definitely, from what I've reviewed it, has played into the plans that we've made. So it's kind of the way I look at it is we're partly, remaining stewards of what's in place and maintaining it and making sure it's good, and also, again, working with that document and moving projects forward that have been on the table for some time.
Great. And the other thing in terms of what you're doing over here at Conant, which is great, I am familiar with the fact there's a whole lot of invasives over there too. So I didn't know if there could be like a concentrated effort to be thinking about removing the sad invasive situation. They're everywhere. I know that, but just kind of keep it in mind because they take off,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one comment on the master plan. I'm glad to hear that that's taken care of, because I think that was one of the things when we had applied from the grant committee, we'd helped work on the park grant, the PARC grant, for the park commission, which was the funding impetus for the splash pad and the walking path. But one of the comments from those reviewers was, you guys really need a park master plan. You can be doing improvements here, there, and everywhere. The new playground, there were lots of ideas about what was needed, but then helping to sort of shape that vision, I guess, and figure out what some of those priorities were. So looking forward to looking at that and seeing what that is, because I think that will be a good foundation to apply for any of the grants. People will look at that favorably, that we've got a park master plan.
Great.
So,
Good. Thank you.
great. Okay, nothing else? I had a question. Yeah, Dan.
Do we still run into limitations in the amount of field space we have in terms of usage?
I think that's always a concern. I think looking at for additional space, I think part of we looked at that property that was purchased at Zero College Highway. I did get a chance to actually kind of drove by and kind of on the backside of it. I'm not sure how much usable field space is going to be available over there. I think it may create for some great open passive recreation space down the road, but as far as field space, I think that remains a challenge. We've been trying to think creatively about that. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of flat space in town, which ultimately is what's needed for field space, without doing major changes to a field, to
In
a
general,
property.
it is still something you're looking.
It's still something that we're looking at in general. It's kind of always, it's in the back of our minds. I know at one point we looked at the abutting property to Conan Park that was for sale at one point, and unfortunately it's designated as wet marshland.
Yep.
So it's again, not going to be usable for the
Right.
purposes.
Near the library there, across from the library?
Yeah.
Is that- Yeah, okay.
That piece of property that was originally
Yeah, yeah,
owned.
okay.
Yeah, so that was, nothing seriously, but it's kind of just been kind of looking here, there, and everywhere, and it's just a challenge to find land that's fairly flat, has decent drainage, and isn't on ledge. So if anyone finds any.
Well, I think the only remaining property that qualifies under that is currently active farmland. Right? So it's
Right.
one or the other. And
Right,
if
and-
you try to take the farmland off, open space is going to swoop right in. So, good luck.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, if no other questions, thank you, Dylan. Appreciate all the updates and,
There
yeah,
are
thanks
diverse
for-
needs.
thanks for coming forward. Absolutely. Great. Good. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if, I believe our water superintendent
Yes.
is here for the second to last item.
I think so.
So out of respect for not asking him to wait till 9 PM, could we go out of order?
Sure.
Assuming that,
Minutes?
I think that's the only item you're
Yeah.
here for?
Where are we?
Yeah,
So this would be for the
Andrew
PCF?
Shepherd,
PCF for Andrew Shepherd, is that right?
is that right, Brett, or did you have something else on the agenda too?
Yeah, I got a little bit of both. One might want to, I think he got his sunglasses.
Oops.
Not bad.
Was it that or something else?
Dylan will be back. I think the two, are these the two items that came out of PPB meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yeah, one was kind of just the second stop of an educational tour on the perils that face the water department and the Southampton and all water departments throughout Massachusetts. I'm anxious to hear what Colin's update on the compensation study, because that plays into a major part of my immediate future and the department's immediate future going forward.
So two items that came out of PPB that I would have brought up is, one is this appointment request for Shepherd
Okay.
on the water department. It's the other one is, we've been holding now for, I don't know, 13, 14 months, the job classification of the supervisor?
Field
For lack-
supervisor
Field
position, yep.
supervisor position, right? And Brett tried to get traction at the last PPB meeting, and they acted on this one.
Okay.
But then on the other one, they deferred to the select board.
Okay. Well, I think we'll be touching some of the compensation later on this evening. Scott's got some work he's done on that, and he's going to be presenting to us. So that may cover some of your question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's take up the PCF, though, because that
Okay.
definitely puts
then,
things out of order, and just move that up since you
Cool.
guys are here.
Want a
and don't have
motion
to-
first, or are we going to go informal again?
So we're going to go to take up the PCF for Andrew Shepherd.
So, do you
We
want
need
to
a motion
move
to
on?
change the order.
I'll make a motion that we approve the PCF for Andrew Shepherd of Holyoke to the position full-time with benefits, water department, to be paid out of the water support wages of a water tech, 40 hours a week, grade 4, step 18, $30.83 an hour, with a starting balance of 120 hours of vacation time, 40 hours of sick time, and 16 hours of personal time, effective upon passage of the select board.
Second. Okay, have a second? Okay, could we have some discussion and/or gather Andrew's here? If we'd like to come on up and introduce yourself and give us a few words about your background. We do have your CV, your resume here, but by all means.
Hi, I'm Andrew Shepherd. Currently work for Springfield Water and Sewer. I hold a grade T4 license and D4 license, which is the highest levels of treatment licensing and distribution licensing in Massachusetts. I have a bachelor degree of environmental science from Westfield State. Been working at Springfield Water and Sewer for the past 5 years, and after meeting Brett, it seems like a good opportunity to come and work for a small town where I can do a little more hands-on work. And I'm excited about the opportunity.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Brett, would you like to add something to that, or?
consider myself lucky to get Andrew in here, and it was kind of by luck. But I will, again, commend him on, he can't get any more licenses in Massachusetts, and he's coming to this town. So I did have great concerns, over the PCF, and there was no doubt he should start at the top of the pay scale. Regardless, got to pay for somebody their experience, their licenses, and their ability. From what I've done, a little bit of talking with Andrew, smart kid, and to get those licenses is when I'm going to follow through with some handouts later on in my educational tour, how extremely difficult it is and how time consuming it is, and it's expensive and investing into time and studying. So
if I could just add, 'cause I wasn't able to attend, but I got a call from one of the members that was there. There were some, we use the word controversial, it's not the right word. There was some heated discussion over a couple of key points. One, he already addressed, starting at the top of the pay scale. I think he's already given the answer, at least from my point of view, that he's got all the licenses and accreditation. And I think it's a little over 6 years of active work now in the field, which ties into the second one about starting off with more vacation time than a one-year employee, when you take into consideration that this is really a lateral transfer.
Okay.
You're doing relatively the same job currently, you're just coming to Southampton to do it. So
you're bringing in accumulated hours from?
Well, no, not accumulated, but you're being treated as a 5-year employee.
I see.
Right, for purposes of vacation, sick, and this is a non-union position, right? So was there an offer for clothing allowance or something like that?
Yeah.
Did you have like a formal offer letter that had other conditions in there?
most of it was verbal. We don't have anything formal yet. I don't want to jump the gun. I had to go through, PBB here. Remember from my own, coming in here.
So right now, the
But,
120
trying
hours
to follow the
vacation time
steps.
would be equivalent to a 5-year person. Somebody having worked 5 years, that's 120 hours vacation is what you're saying? What's on the PCF? So somebody new coming in who was not considered a lateral transfer, as you're naming it, would be getting what, 1 week's vacation, or what's the?
I don't have the book in front of me, but I think a non-union spot is 1 week to start.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that the request was for 120 hours, which within 5 years, again, without having the book in front of me,
Okay.
it was more about,
Dylan? Yeah,
I almost swore it was
which is more of a difference of opinion, I believe, between
Okay.
the vice chair and the department head.
I see. Okay. But they ended up signing off on this?
And my other take on this is, again, there's not a spot here for him to sign, but I don't necessarily see Brett acting independently. I'm sure he has the backing of the water commissioners on this, which tells me then it's budget friendly, and anything that was addressed in there is equal to or less than what the highway union has, which somebody may have taken offense to that comparison.
Okay.
Which then leads into the next pause, whether you want to hear from, we're still taking up this one issue, so.
Yeah. Let's take up this issue in terms of the appointment. Does anybody else have any questions about the appointment, salary level, anything else that's been mentioned here to this? We've got a motion on the table and a second, so we're ready to vote if nobody has any questions.
I'm not
Cindy?
quite ready to vote. I have a question. Absolutely nothing against the qualifications and the recommendations at all, except that I just know we're in the midst of this whole evaluation of our structure and looking for, clarity and equity along all the lines. And I don't know if the right person shows up all the time in good departments and can't afford them. I happen to know the Board of Assessors struggled with that not too many months ago. And, I just don't know. I'm not even sure how to phrase my question except to express, I want the right thing for the water department, that's for sure, and I want the right person, but I just want to put this out.
This is within the budget.
I guess how I would say, yes. Well, yes, but it's an enterprise fund.
Right.
It's
So
not,
I
it's
get
an,
that.
it's an enterprise fund, so it's based on the water rate, not the tax
Yeah, I do
base.
understand that,
Right.
yeah.
So two things. One is the water technician supervisor's job, field supervisor job, came in after we had closed out the Collins report and sent that in.
Okay.
But they have always been authorized to have 2 technicians.
Okay.
So this is really filling the second technician post that's been open for as long as I've been on this board. The issue's going to come up is the current water technician has submitted a request to be considered for the field placement supervisor, and that seems to be lost in no man's land. But I would say that this grading is the existing structure that we have, and the steps, so that if it was in the Collins report, which I don't think it is, but it's probably going to be in the new report that we're going to do, I think this is comparable. I think we're going to be fine. But I also realize we're supposed to be a 3-person department. We've been running at 2 people for X amount of time, which means they're working 7 days a week because testing has to be done. And
Right, it's definitely within our budget. It's been voted on for 2 years in a row, town meeting. And the field supervisor position has been voted on for 2 fiscal calendar year budgets. So it is there, approved for. And to go on to what John's saying, that we do work 7 days a week, and everybody doesn't realize where the water comes from until it stops. And so there are, I feel we'd sell a commodity that people put in their mouths. You want people here confident, trained, reliable, and show up when stuff hits the fan. And it's getting harder and harder in this world, in the water world, to find these people that want to come work. And we are absolutely competing against every single town that anybody can get in their car and drive. And that's going to go to later on again, where people are not coming to Southampton because they like spelling Southampton versus Easthampton or their pay stub from there. They're coming for the pay stub, and that is it. And it's been discussed for years. There's a lot of departments out there that are struggling. I have a stack of open positions that have been open for 6, 8, 10 months on a lot of towns. Everybody's struggling, so I've had a lot of struggles in my first 10 months, and if Andrew gets by us without this, I'm going to keep the paperwork separate, but I have more to talk on that in a little bit, so if you guys want to.
So with that, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor?
I
Aye.
All right, I don't hear any opposition. All right, so Andrew, welcome on board.
Welcome.
Congratulations, welcome.
You got your work cut out for you, I'm sure. All right, very good. So we don't have the other agenda.
There's
So
like 3 or
just-
4 things before we get to compensation.
Yeah,
Yep.
just
And
very
so-
briefly, because we didn't have anything else on the agenda for this, so.
All right.
Do you want me to take that up now or when we get to the compensation?
Well, it depends if you're willing to, the compensation is going to be discussed a little bit later on. We've got a few things to get through before then, but not too much. So, I mean, if you want to, we'll take a look at it, and then if you want to hang out for a
So
little bit.
this is a resignation letter from Dennis Senecal to the end of this month. Long drawn out process of Collins compensation study. He's gonna. So I wanted to bring this all up before but I didn't.
It's just
think
one.
Andrew-
It's just
Yeah,
one.
yeah. This one there? Okay. Different paper. Nice paper. So, that's what led me to, at the beginning of this presentation, to see whether or not where I should start, to show you where we're heading to a department of 1, if Andrew didn't.
So I think just because process and procedural, not to get you in trouble, but you can't, you just got to refer to the position, not the name, because they're not here. But secondly, this document could come in under the agenda under any other necessary business that cannot wait, because you're on a timeline. So if we,
I asked them. Sorry. If I said I'm a new guy here in town.
I know.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So I think we can definitely talk about this, but we have to do it under that line item.
Yeah, if you can, if you can hang out and wait.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay,
All right.
good, all right.
There's a lot more to this
Yes.
situation that.
And then we can go through the whole thing, just
Yeah.
the position, not the name.
Okay, Yeah, so if you'll just hang up, we'll take it up under any other business, okay?
Got it.
All right, and otherwise, Andrew, you're good, and that
We're gonna
position
use
is
the new
fine?
banks, please, for a couple
So
years.
thank you for coming in. You may stay if you'd like, but otherwise, we'll get into the regular business that's on the agenda. So we have a couple of new appointments. Let me pull up my,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you want to take them up separately?
I think we may as well. They're all different.
I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Ann Bowman, which is a new appointment to the Housing Authority, term to expire May 20th, 2025.
Second?
Okay, that'll be the next election, yep. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Make a motion to approve Stephen Cowley, new appointment, fence viewer, one-year term to expire June 30th, 2025.
Second?
second. Just a little bit of discussion. This is the one that I had held back on a previous meeting because it was very unclear what this fence viewer position really is and whether it's still necessary. If there is an MGL, which you have in your packet, that refers to it, I asked Scott to check it out with various other town administrators, and I think basically several of the ones that responded to you, you had quite a few responses, several of them said, oh, well, gee, if you find out what the fence viewer is supposed to do, let us know too. So I think there's a lot of towns that are not fulfilling this position, and/or there are other ones that are, but combining it in with the building commissioner position, which seems to make a little bit more sense. But given that we have it on the books, I'm going to recommend that we go ahead and make this one appointment for the year. It's just a one-year appointment, and then during this year, we take this up and take a look at whether or not this really fits better with the building commissioner. So it basically is someone who is going to be acting on complaints between residents that have got, maybe a fence is perceived to be on somebody else's property, whatever, they get
Like we
intervened.
had come up 2 weeks ago. Not on the agenda.
Oh, okay, on the fence, okay, maybe, I'm forgetting it, but yeah. So basically, just looking at fencing disputes, and a lot of this went back to history in terms of, watching out for stone walls and all those kinds of things. So it's really, it's a 100-plus-year-old law that, again, a lot of towns have sort of put aside. But I think we can go ahead. Stephen has stepped forward and said he'd be willing to do this position. He's an agriculture person. He's on the Ag Commission himself. And so he's willing to do that. So I think I'm moving forward in my own judgment about let's go ahead and go ahead and make the appointment.
Is this a paid position or a volunteer position?
It's volunteer.
It's technically, I believe the fence viewer is supposed to get $5 per incident, and that's done from the people that make the complaint. If you go back and look at the ancient law that's here. There's a written report that has to be done. There's various forms at the back of the handbook that I think I passed around 2 or 3 meetings ago. But there's a form for action by fence viewers from citizens who have a problem. The fence viewer has to fill out a form and a big checklist about, what the evidence is, what is insufficient, what's correct, what's incorrect, and, make his determination. So there's a whole process here. I really don't know, previous fence viewer-wise, how often this really got called upon. I don't remember ever hearing about it very much, so I'm assuming it's not a big occurrence, but hey, you never know. And sure enough, if we don't appoint it, we'll need it. So,
That's a long answer. Does he get paid $5? Is that
not by the town. He's getting paid by
the
people that bring the
disputing
complaint.
people?
Yeah, $5 is what I think it says in the law. I'd have to go back and look at it again, but I believe that's what it is.
Okay.
And if he doesn't do his job, I think he has to return the $5 or something. I mean, it's just amazing. But anyway, that's why I say I think this is a little outdated, but we'll follow it. So I think that's enough of my spiel on that. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of appointing Stephen Cowley?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and we'll get him some information here about what this job really entails a little bit.
Probably start with getting him a town ID if he's going to go on properties. But make a motion to approve Scott Sybeck, new appointment, representative for the town of Southampton to the FRTA, which is the Franklin Regional Transportation Authority Advisory Board, fiscal year 25, July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good. Now we got you official, so you can attend the meetings, the FRTA meetings, Scott. Thank you very much. All right, so with that, let's jump on to town administrator report.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Did my PCF get onto the agenda for businesses?
It's on, but it hasn't been voted yet.
I have to go back to run the election still, so
Okay,
I'm gonna come back if I have.
okay.
Will you come
You-
get
You're
you?
around for a little bit? Yeah, yeah, okay. Swing back by then if you're, yeah. We'll get there. Yep,
Okay.
it's on the agenda, thank you. So Scott, go ahead, Town Administrator.
So quickly, our auditors are going to be starting their on-site visit for the FY23 audit on September 16th. So they set up the portal. There's a few questions that myself, Bradley, and Jen have to get back to them, some information that they're seeking, but we should be able to have that this week, and they can.
What date did you say?
September 16th.
Thank you.
So that should, hopefully, it'll be a little bit quicker than the FY22 audit, and then we can get right to FY24 with the engagement letter. I'm gonna be flipping some pancakes on September 25th at the COH, try to get out into the community, do some coffee hours, things like that. So if you want blueberry or chocolate chip, let me know what your preference is. VADAR will finally be conducting the general training on September 11th. For all the departments. It's going to be a virtual training, and we're going to be able to record it. So if anyone isn't able to make it or needs to repeat it, that'll be available to them as well. Wi-Fi is going to be completed this Friday, and while we have Novus here, they're going to do the tour of the police, fire, and library for their facility assessment as part of the quote for bringing them under our umbrella. Preparations for closing for Zero College Highway are ongoing. Katie had sent me the closing schedule as well as the draft deed yesterday, which I forwarded to you, so most of the stuff is ready to go with that. We do have the certified copy from the town clerk for the minutes of the annual town meeting, which was approved. So Jen is also working with KP Law's financial person just to get the accounts ready, so that's going to be ready as well. So it shouldn't take that much time, and they've been in contact with each other today to set up the account. So we're on schedule, and it should move in the next couple weeks. We actually start renegotiations with our highway union this week as well. I did reach out to the Collins Center, so we've been having back and forth compensation regarding the compensation plan, and we're making a little bit of progress about resolving everything. And we are finalizing the background check on an assistant town accountant candidate with the hopes of bringing the salary before the PQB and the select board at the next meeting. So.
And just relative to the Collins report in terms of resolving issues, I know that we're not going to ask them to do any more work or any correction, but you're trying to work out what it is we're going to pay them for the work that they didn't do very well.
Right.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of Scott on that?
Not right now.
Okay. All right. How about some select board reports? Cindy, something from your committees?
Not a whole lot. The Open Space Committee will meet later this week. The Board of Health will meet tomorrow night. And the Board of Assessors has been meeting on a regular basis without any specific, other than ordinary business, so there's nothing special to report at this time.
Okay.
For myself, the only thing I have to know is the Conservation Commission will bring up some bylaw amendments for the next town meeting, so we'll get those to the select board.
Bylaw amendment for?
Amendments. They, the conservation agent has some markups that he wants to bring forth that have to be approved by the Conservation Commission first, and then
They need to also come to the bylaw committee?
on the bylaw committee.
They should, anyway.
Yeah. I'll make sure he knows that. He probably does, but
Yeah. Okay.
thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Stephen?
I guess then open space has been covered, and planning I'll pick up with. Planning board meets tomorrow night. We're looking at proposed zoning bylaw amendments around this clarification of special permits, special, and who's got the authority.
That's the 40R thing, or?
No,
something else?
No, this is something that I think has distracted our consultant for several months. We
Okay.
assigned him this. It was perhaps a fallout from editing our last round of zoning bylaw revisions, but he was quite keen on the fact that our process is not clear around special permits. So that's going to be previewed tomorrow night, not yet acted on. My last understanding is that zoning bylaws do not go to the bylaw committee.
They don't.
Okay, thank you. Planning board, review of bonding for the large agrivoltaic insulation plant up at Bashista Orchards. Make sure that we get that right, and renewing at increasing value every 5 years over the life of the facility. So that's for decommissioning. No, 40R is in the future, and other planning issues are not ripe for discussion. But I have had a dozen conversations about what land the town owns and what can we do with it. And I'll just tee up one that's painfully familiar. The town owns land on Riverdale Road, is the verbatim quote. The town owns several parcels on Riverdale Road. Can we use it for X? Which parcel? And it depends, because some of it is dedicated and some of it isn't, and some of it is constrained, and some of it may be less so. We have no clarity about the inventory of town-owned land, and it's only 70-some parcels, and I reiterate my offer to put it straight for the benefit of all landed committees, but I was particularly motivated chilling out this weekend watching the Cost Efficiencies Committee on videotape. I suggest anybody do that. But looking at a future capital plan for the community, which I wholeheartedly, enthusiastically address, I submit that land is not a typical capital asset. It doesn't have any of the same characteristics as a fire truck. Maybe acquisition date, but after that, even value loses meaning in translation. So I'm just going to do it and ask for forgiveness later.
Okay, so there is basically, as you know, the spreadsheet that Bradley puts together. As the town accountant, he has to submit this entire set of assets for everything around town. So that is the spreadsheet that you've seen.
It's a good starting point.
And since then, that's a requirement that he has to do on a yearly basis. And since then, we've gotten a list from the assessors of the town-owned properties, and then we'll be bringing that up.
Were they able to break it out?
Somewhat. I mean, you can tell it by addresses. It's not, it's basically notes on the cards.
They're
so
using
it's
the
not,
same code?
Yeah, there's something you can tell, I think, on that.
Right.
We have to sort the columns a little bit differently.
Okay.
But we were looking at what's town-owned, like public building property versus conservation property versus tax title property. And so we've got a list from David on that, which we'll bring up at cost efficiencies and look at that as well.
Space for,
You know, thank you, because I was thinking exactly the same thing. The question of parking spaces for the Greenway, is that what you just said?
goes right better, right?
Yeah, because the question came up on an earlier report tonight about parking areas for the Greenway and Sheldon's and all that stuff, and I know there's town-owned property behind there, maybe not appropriate, but if we have this inventory, it could be kind of helpful.
So part of it, which I'm sure Chris is going to update you on cost efficiency, but I'll steal some of her thunder now, is we're meeting again tomorrow.
Okay.
And part of the work that's being done now, starting with this GASB requirement sheet that Bradley puts together, which is just to tie to a number on the balance sheet that means absolutely nothing to a nonprofit municipal government body. But we have to do it because the feds in their infinite wisdom said this was the right thing to do, and it costs us an extra $10,000 an audit to do. So, not that I'm against it, but that's happening anyways. So we have all this property. The property should only be in the town's name for one of three reasons. One, it's town property, this building, right, in the land and the parking lot. Two, we took it by tax title, and therefore you want that separated because that shouldn't be in our name. We should be keeping that separate. In theory, we want to get that back out on the tax rolls. And then the third one would be is if we've took something by eminent domain or by gift. right? We want those coded separately. And
What about purchased?
But why would you purchase? If you purchase for a legitimate government need, then it becomes a government asset like this building.
Comes to town property.
Okay, so the conservation property and the water protection property is purchased.
Correct, but I would hope that all those properties that were purchased for conservation purposes are so coded, because, just like my parcel has a unique number that ties to my wife and I for the 3 parcels we own. If I was to go and buy another parcel in town with both our names on it, it should show, just running that one name, here's all those properties.
I got you, yeah.
So
That's
we're
a good
we're
idea.
working through the process to validate that that's correct and maybe tweak it as we go along.
So, back to what Stephen just said, does Stephen need to do something? Because he's going to do it and be
He's
thanked
trying to
later.
steal our, he watched a videotape over the weekend. He's going to crash our 3 o'clock meeting tomorrow, create a quorum, which he can do, but he just can't talk because it's not posted and there's already 2 of us there.
Anyway, we'll see, let's get through the meeting tomorrow and figure out how complicated anything is or isn't, and what we know how to do, and if we don't.
I do.
I think we can
have the
definitely.
feeling that Stephen wants a one-person select board.
Just email me the spreadsheet, and
Yes, I know.
Will do.
it'll all disappear.
You've got the first spreadsheet, right? But not the second
No,
one?
no, I have neither. I
Oh,
can't
I thought you had them on the,
translate from
okay. I will send it.
Facebook or whatever it was.
I will send it to you. I thought it was already up on.
No, I'm trying to avoid rekeying, because that's another source of error.
Right. No, that's fine. So
I
we've
can
got,
merge.
we've got the official one
Excel.
from Bradley, but then the assessor's one is only focusing on the land, obviously, so. But even David said he wasn't sure because of some of the notes on the cards. It's not categorized as well as I would like it. There's
That's-
notes there. And so
that's
you can kind of
exactly
decipher
right.
it, but we'll take a look.
So
at
if
it.
you guys take care of the vehicles, I'll take care of the
Yeah,
land.
no, we're not,
And we'll
yeah.
get somewhere.
Trying to make out a long-term plan for how we
Did you have
replace our
any
capital.
other committee reports?
I don't know, not that I can remember.
I
All right,
give
John.
mine. All right.
Yeah.
So the only one that I attended, this is the last one, was a Norris School Committee
Yeah.
meeting on a Friday that the Select Board and Finance Committee was invited to. Scott did attend, Chris did attend on behalf of the Select Board, the tour. It was almost 2 hours tour through the entire building, the nooks and crannies, and up the stairs and down into the bowels of the HVAC system. Norris still operates on steam heating system with rubber tubes running through the hall, so it's a little inefficient. Cost efficiency took note that we pay $14,000 a month for the gas to create that steam to run. So I think ultimately what came out of that whole tour, other than we got to see the cafeteria has been completely rebuffed, refinished. The gym has been sanded down to the bare and brought up, and now it's color-coded for the baseball field, for the pickleball fields, for the basketball, volleyball. They're all in there by color. The stage in the cafeteria is empty and sealed, and it will no longer be a storage facility. So they did a lot of good work to get the school ready to open, but with anything, the oldest part of that building was in 1956, right, or 54? So it's quickly approaching 75 years. It's had one overhaul in that section, and then the newer section, I believe, was 94 they came on. It still has a lot of good use out of it, but we started talking about doing like an envelope study of Norris and what we need, and prioritizing, looking over the 5-year plan and all that. And, Scott suggested that we probably should do the same exercise for our town buildings. So we're going to put that together as a collective package, because Norris is a department of this town. It's not Hampshire Regional, it's a separate government body. And we want to include all the government buildings under the town, including the library, including Conant Park, the pavilion, sections of the park. But develop the plan, see what it is, because that will feed into what I'd like to accomplish on the 5-year capital plan, that we start rolling out 20-year plans and how we're going to fund this and move forward. And if we ever get to the next stop where we do have to replace something, we have a full, articulate, documented story as to why to go to the voters. So
Yeah. Great.
that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah, and just to say that the tour was very, very informative. I hadn't been back there in that detail of a tour in many, many, many years. Probably since I was a student there, actually. So it's been quite a while. So that was good. I'm glad you pulled it together. And thanks to, is it Tom?
Tom, yeah, and I would just also add, we also were able to witness and test all the security enhancements that we were able to get through with the police department's help to get the state grant to pay for, so it didn't cost the community anything. The
Right.
Department of State Police paid for all the enhancements, and now I don't think you can open that door.
Yeah, very good. Okay. All right, just a couple things from me.
Wave to the police on the camera.
Nothing new on the grant committee in terms of the Assistance to Firefighters grant. Another Friday went by and there was nothing out there, but again, I've talked to the chief that had helped us with this, and he said, don't give up hope yet. It's still rolling, and it's like, but they're gonna run out of money soon. I mean, this is, it's a nationwide grant, and, there's millions and millions of dollars, but so far, out of some 70 projects that have been awarded in Massachusetts, Southampton's name has not appeared. So fingers crossed for next Friday, this coming Friday, but I don't know, it's looking very doubtful, which is very unfortunate in terms of the tanker pumper and the breathing gear. Yeah. But we are working on getting Kate and I are trying to set up a date for a grant committee meeting somewhere in the next week or so, week to 10 days. We've both been kind of slammed with schedules, and we've got 2 other people that are interested in maybe being on the grant committee, so that's a good thing. And we'll incorporate them to come in and listen at least. The Senior Center Building Committee, I believe, is meeting on the 12th. And the Public Safety Building Committee should be meeting soon, but they haven't scheduled anything that I've seen yet. So we should be, in the next week or two, before our next meeting, we'll have committee meetings probably for everybody, pretty much. Okay?
Senior Center Building Committee on
12th.
The 12th.
Yeah. And nothing yet for public safety at the moment. Okay? So I think that's it for now, and we've got to do probably, we said that we would do a master plan implementation review meeting probably toward the end of September. I'll get that one scheduled as well. We're trying to do those on a kind of a quarterly basis if we can, 3 times a year minimum. Okay, I think that's committee reports. Let's jump into new business here finally. Scott, first up, classification compensation plan, and I know you've put together a presentation if you want to walk us through what you got here.
Okay. So this is just a initial presentation of where we are currently, because we're transitioning to the next phase of it, so I want to provide everyone an update. Hopefully tonight I can just talk about what our results are so far, discuss the point factor system I've been putting together, the draft exempt salary scale, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, some of the initial findings, not diving too deep into the data, but just overall 10,000 foot view of where we might be. Goal setting for the next step of the compensation, some things to start thinking about, and then what the next steps would be. So every time we kind of go through the compensation data gathering, I always bring up this quote that knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. So what we do with the information is a little bit different than the nuances and what we know specific. So we're slowly entering the wisdom phase of this. So just to give you an overview of our exempt positions, this chart shows you 2 things with the average of all the communities that we have received information for, which is most of them. We are just still waiting on Munson, which I was promised this week, and Hadley probably next week, so this will change a little bit. And then I am just waiting for the actuals from South Hadley as well, so that might impact it a little bit, but it shouldn't be too much. What you see here is the green, which is the average, and I took the minimum, the maximum, and made the midpoint for their ranges, and then the actual salary for the people holding the position right now. And then the purple is Southampton as a % of the average. So if we're lower than the average of our comparable communities, it's going to be less than 1. If we're greater than, it'll be more than 1. Some things did kind of stick out that I just want to kind of point out. When you look at the average midpoint and the average actuals, for most positions, they're relatively within the same neighborhood, so that kind of helps with establishing the market when we do our actual pay scales. So that that kind of justifies or verifies what the information is that we're getting. Most are within $1 or $2. There's a few outliers. I think the assessor's like off by about a little bit less than 3, but most of them are really within the ballpark. As a percent of the averages, of course, again, you kind of have to do the nuances, take it with a grain of salt, and do a little bit more research, look at the data more in depth. But when you look at things like the town accountant, I highlighted just the 4 that are in yellow, which are the lowest. Is it really a direct comparison to all town accounts? You have to take into consideration, like our town accountant now has MCPPO, things like that. Does a town accountant in other communities, do they have water, sewer, and electric company, MLP that they have to worry about, or do they have no public utilities and they don't have to worry about those types of billings? So you have to know a little bit of the nuances. Other things like our highway superintendent, a traditional highway superintendent may just focus on roads, whereas our highway superintendent may be slightly more elevated, dealing with the grants and working with Ty and Bond, a lot of the engineering and the environmental issues that the town faces. So is it strictly a comparison to all the other highway superintendents? So that's why you kind of have to get into the weeds a little bit when doing the point factor system. So it's not just a market analysis. It's not just saying, here's the title, here's the salary, this is what we're going to end up with. So you do have to dive into it a little bit more. As a whole, our percentages are maximum. So we're in the 80s to 90s on most of them for our current schedule, which shows that really they're not too far off. The only problem is that we currently have 18 steps, which is quite a bit, and that's a lot of steps to have, and a lot of people are lower in the steps. So that's why when you compare the actuals, we're much lower, because people haven't been progressing fast enough to the higher step, or they've just been stagnant and staying at the same step for multiple years. So that's something to consider as well.
Scott, just a question, sorry. On that actual column in the green, that is the actual of, not the average from the other towns. That's our actual?
No, that's the actual average.
Actual average of the towns, but not Southampton's.
Right. That's a separate chart.
Okay.
Yep. So this is all the communities that that I received actual data for and averaged them out. So what the actual people are earning right now.
And that's a per hour rate.
I had to convert everything. Some are 19 hours, some are 32, some are 40, some are 37 and a half. So I had to kind of get a baseline.
But the very last column, Southampton in percentage, actual, that is our incumbent employee as a percentage of which number?
Of the average?
The average actual. So this is
the average, the midpoint average. Oh no, the average actual. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So the library director is 71% of the average.
Average actual in the larger region is higher than the average maximum of those same towns. On average, towns are paying more than the top step.
Yes, so the average actual for Southampton is 0.74 for town accountant. Yes. So that's 74% of the 4665.
Right. But the column right next to it's got average maximum is 44.55.
Yes.
So Stephen's pointing out that what in reality is happening is above the maximum. So is there potentially like 1 or 2 outliers in there that are super compensated that only came out in the past year during hard times?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Some might be on a contract, some might be treated individually. So
this is super helpful. This is amazing.
It's always good to be the Monday morning quarterback, right? So could you tweak this to I'd be interested as we go further down, of all those positions, 2 of those positions are elected here in this town. What are they? I have a perception that in other communities, elected individuals make less than regular employees.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious if that's true or not down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the nuances that we kind of have to dive into, elected versus appointed. If you have an appointed position, usually you have a wider market and that affects things. Yeah. Because you're more of a competition, so. So when you look at just the comparable averages, again, these are probably gonna, change a little bit, but, the midpoint, we're at 0.79. The maximum, like I said, is kind of there, and the actual average is a 0.84. We're only dealing with 11 positions too right now, so, a little bit, a few data points can have a big impact.
Sorry, because this question of enterprise fund came up earlier. Does that include that kind of situation where they're not part of the regular budget, they're on the enterprise fund?
Yes, everyone's under the umbrella of a comp plan. Yep.
Okay.
So the next step is putting together a point factor system, something that we can use to rank all the different positions and put them in some kind of an order based on their knowledge and experience, confidentiality, their supervision. Generally, most point factor systems use these metrics. Education, experience, accountability, judgment, complexity, and so on. And they're very similar. The Collins Center uses a similar one. HRS uses a similar one. NeoGov uses a similar one. I'm used to the Hay system, which is a little bit more complicated. But these are good just for setting a standard and a base, and having at least a neutral way to rank positions. So if we do have a unique position that may not have a market comparable, we can use the point factor system to make sure that it's adjusted properly within the organization. One of the things, I did take this one from the old DIJ study, but with some modifications. For example, I took out motor skills, physical demands, occupational risk, things like that. That's not really something that we would need to look at for generally exempt employees. A lot of times it's also part of the job description, so it shouldn't have that much of an impact.
So how do you interpret that, Scott? I mean, you're seeing a bunch of numbers, but what does third and 60 mean, for example?
So those are ranking. So what I did was, under the first and second degrees, I blanked those out because if you're a manager, you shouldn't be in the first or second degree. You automatically have to be at least in the third for most of them. If you are in the first or second, then we may want to reclassify that as an hourly position or a non-management. So with this, it's really different levels. So for confidentiality, for example, the first one would be not subject to any confidential information. The second level would be subject to just departmental confidentiality. So if you're in the health department, you're just subject to health department things. If you're the third degree, you'd be subject to confidential things throughout the entire organization. So someone maybe the highway superintendent, town administrator, the police and fire chief, they have a little bit more confidentiality than most other people in the department. So, and each one does have a separate standard that I can share that'll be published and made public to everybody. So these are just some basic ideas of what it actually means, and then I don't have the PDF, but that's the next part of the next phase, is putting that and actually using the different metrics to rank each position. I've done some preliminary ones just to make sure everything works, and we're ready to move to the next step. So using that, I did come up with A through K. So 12 ranges, which seems like a lot, but we also need to make sure that we build in some future positions and future things in case there is ever a promotion or a change in job descriptions, or if we have a new position come in, we need to make sure that we have some flexibility and enough area to actually place people properly. If you look at the old DIJ report, they had pretty much everyone in one category. So everyone was COA director, town accountant, treasurer, library director, town clerk, principal assessor, health director, and building commissioner, all within one group. And then the next group was water superintendent, highway super, TA, fire chief, and police chief in the next one. That's, 2 is way too low. So we're not going to use all of these, and it really depends on how the point factor system plays out and where people rank. So that's going to be the next step.
You're not gonna use them all, but you're gonna have them all there. There might be only one spot at J, and maybe the next spot doesn't fall until you get to G.
Right.
So the,
Exactly.
Yep.
So the next thing that I did was start putting together some wage and salary scales. Again, they're just a draft and they can be changed, but I usually look at it based on what the market or the midpoint is. And the market midpoint is really a position where an employee who is fully competent at their position. It's not someone just out of school that might get their not their degree, but, their certifications in a couple of years, who may not have a lot of experience, versus someone who might have 20 or 30 years experience, has all the water classification licenses, things like that, would generally be higher up. So this is a person that's, right in the middle, has a few years experience, meets the minimum qualifications. This is our current compensation chart. As I mentioned, just to give you an overview, there's only 6 grades and there's 18 steps. And if you were to input most of our salaries, they would be more towards the steps 1 through 10. So there's a couple different options I just wanted to kind of show on how we can kind of actually build our compensation scales. The first one is really just a straight range. Each grade has a range from a minimum to a maximum, and the middle is the midpoint. So if you're going to have an employee coming in with lesser experience, they'd be between the minimum and the midpoint. If they have more experience, they'd be between the midpoint and the maximum. But the midpoint will vary depending on what the town wants to do for our goal for compensation. So do we want to be at the 50th percentile? Do we want to be at the 25th or 75th? So that really depends. So this is, it's going to be variable depending, what path the town wants to take. The thing about this is it doesn't have steps, so you need to have constant monitoring of it. So if you do have an employee that comes in, you have to look at the history and see where similar employees in other departments may have been coming in, so it's not to disrupt internal equity. So you do have to, so it takes a few more steps, but it provides the most flexibility for managers.
And how did you populate this particular table with dollar value?
The midpoint market was based on the data that I received from the other towns and where they could potentially fit in.
So you looked at those job titles and you assigned them a grade?
Not yet. So this is just looking at what the averages and what the midpoints are for other towns and seeing where they would probably fall, most likely.
So with their dollar figures, what grade they would fall into?
Yep.
Without necessarily attributing that to a particular position.
you would, you do the point exercise.
Yep.
That would tell you the grade they,
Right.
the grade they go into.
Right.
Right. And at this point in time, though, okay, so basically our managers are exempt, right?
Mm-hmm.
All
You're
but
only
J and
talking
K.
exempt right now. That's all you're
Right.
talking about, is exempt.
Exactly.
That's all he's talking about, is exempt.
Just exempt. So hourly, I would definitely do a step scale. So that would be the next, after we settle this, that'll be the next presentation. Another option,
Sorry, there's three exempt positions missing from this list. Is that because they would be on a different, because they're on employment contracts?
I would still put them into at least having the scale as a guideline, because they are contractual, but there should be a TA, fire chief, police chief, and town accountant should still be in there just for transparency, so you still have a range, and that, you know, they may not be officially in the class plan, but they should be related to. And same thing with like elected officials too. They're not technically in the class plan. They have to be approved by town meeting every year,
Yeah.
but they should be included as the analysis every year, just to make sure that they're keeping up with market, but also that, you know, it's not too much or too little, but we try to get it right.
And don't we have some, though, that are hourly employees, right?
Yes, so this is just the salaried.
Okay.
The health director wouldn't need to, is included in this, but that's gonna have to change from a non-exempt to exempt. This is another potential option that we might have. The idea is to set the market or the midpoint, and then depending on years of service or steps, it's to push people towards the midpoint and the market so that they don't fall too far behind. So every year you would increase a step. And then past the market or the midpoint, it would be based on your experience or your merit. So if you have someone with that, a lot of years of experience, they'd probably be to the right of the yellow line, which is more merit-based. If they're brand new out of college and they're just getting started, so they'd probably start at a step 1, and then every year they would progress automatically over 5, 6, 7 years, which by that point you should be that competent employee able to fulfill all the job responsibilities and obligations. So it would force you to the market no matter what. This also has to be maintained every year, so every year it has to be adjusted as well.
Is this 17? Or do you have more slides, or?
Mm-hmm. And then the another option is this: we have a traditional grade and step scale. In this, it's a little bit. I took off a little more of the maximum because you want to kind of shift the midpoint or the market a little bit more to the right, so you don't want to automatically over 7 or 10 years be at the top of the scale when you're competing with employees that are 20 or 30 years. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to do a step system, although it's definitely feasible and it's the easiest one to do. You would just progress a step every year or 2 years based on, if you're performing the job competently and have a good performance review, you would automatically get the step. And then the COLAs would adjust the entire wage scale. So that kind of brings us to what the compensation goals should be for the town. Just, an example is Amherst philosophy from FY15 was they wanted to pay at the 50th percentile, which is, the median. And then for their smaller group of communities, they would pay at the 75th, so a little bit higher. Do we want to, have on average a target? Do we want to be at the 50th percentile for most of our positions? Do we want to be at the 25th to the 50th? And we track that every year just to see how we're progressing and where we are. The other thing is just because you are lower or higher in the percentile doesn't, that's only for the ranges and the steps. So it doesn't really impact the actuals as much. You could have a workforce that's brand new, so you'd be traditionally lower. Or you could have a very experienced workforce, so you would be higher in the actuals. So this would only apply to the ranges.
And is that really Amherst in FY15?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's something I always refer back to. They wanted to be a community, I forget what the phrase they used, not a community of goods, a preferred employer community. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to kind of go out to the market and be able to have a whole compensation plan and say that, we're above X.
Mm-hmm. So if we were to write the essence of that last paragraph to describe Southampton as you have analyzed it, mm-hmm. Is it accurate to say that we don't have this larger set of comparable communities? We have a selected cohort of very comparable communities.
Yeah.
And that we are somewhat shy of the 50th percentile, all things as equal as you can make them.
Right. Yeah, with Amherst comp study back in FY15, which is one of the major ones in this area, first, before they become kind of more trendy, what they did was they did an entire state view, and that was their entire comparable communities. So they had maybe about 25 or 30 communities that they based themselves, across the entire state. And Amherst is a little bit different too, because they have positions that may not exist in our area, planning and economic development director, things like that, where you kind of have to look more on a statewide level. But then they also have positions that are very similar: library director, health director, custodian, things like that are more local. So they were looking both on a statewide and on a macro and a micro, essentially. But the other thing I just want to mention, and I know that we talked about it during the water department's PCF, but I do think we need to start standardizing and updating our policies on benefits and vacations and things like that. So that if we have a water tech that does come in and they have 5 or 10 years experience, do they have to start over at 1 week or vacation, or would they be transferred to 3? What do we actually consider credible service towards that? If they were a lifeguard for 5 years and now they're being a water tech, the lifeguard experience probably during the summer wouldn't carry over. So you do have to be kind of recognize that. It has to be also private experience is another thing. You might have a public health nurse, new candidate. They may have been a nurse in a hospital and they want to transfer to the public sector. So does that private sector nursing, carry over as well? So
I think that's been one of our challenges, if I'm not mistaken, is that, oftentimes we've had people come in that have had experience in other towns for 4 or 5 years or maybe longer, but they end up starting at the very low end of the scale here, if I'm not mistaken. They start at 1 or 2, and they always have to come for the exception. The department head has to come for the exception if they want to do anything higher than that, if I'm correct on that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I know. So I think our entire process is outdated and antiquated, right? And it just starts. I mean, the current program that we have with the 18 steps is based off, I think, a 1971 Department of Labor manufacturing wage study that came out of Connecticut. We don't make widgets, right? So a lot of that doesn't apply to us, which is why people were grouped the way they were. Our benefits, I mean, I'm in the private sector. We're not hiring anybody that doesn't at least get 3 weeks vacation on day 1. Now, it's an accrual, right? You don't get it on day 1, but over the course of the year, you earn it all. And, Mass state law doesn't apply to us, but we have to deal with sick leave and parental leave and all those things out there that, if folks have a partner, significant other that's out there in the private sector, they're seeing this in here. And it used to be that the offset was the pension, right? So senior people, longer people in the tooth that work for municipalities get that. Newer folks coming in under 30 and under, they don't even plan on being with anybody that long. Mm-hmm. The average person under 30 only lasts 3.5 years at a job, and they're bouncing, and they'll have 6 jobs before they're 40, right? So that's not necessarily going to apply. I like the point system and all that. I would stay away from the hourly rates, but I understand why they're there for the visual. But under our current system, unless we just go to the steps in the grade, because whatever we do here, it's up to PPB to enforce this and roll this out. And that is a broken machine that we currently have. And I would suggest, although this isn't the place for it, but I'll just plant the seed, that I'm willing to propose and figure out a way to pay for a 2-day-a-week HR person, 14 hours or 15 hours to start. There's more work that they can do, but we got to start chipping this. And then if we had one gatekeeper controlling this and applying the standard, preferably not the town administrator, because we want the town administrator to be our safety check, that when it comes through, okay, he can apply his executive level of HR experience, say, this is right, and just oversee it.
So John, your proposal with the 2-day per week of personnel expert, does that replace PQB?
Oh, I would suggest, because the payroll, or the bylaw committee would have to rewrite the bylaw.
But I mean, if all those things happened, we would no longer have because we're always faced with enough people to be on our committees and.
Right. And also, I get it. You have to be a resident of the town in order to be on the committee, which then limits the committee too. Right. And out of frustration, a number of employees from the town come forward and sit on that committee. And that makes it more difficult because, everyone tries not to be biased, but when these votes and discussions impact you, it can become very hostile.
Yes.
When it's really just having frank conversations. So it was great in the 70s when it passed.
Yeah.
When you had more people than you needed to hold these offices and positions, but that, I think this is a 4-prong approach. This is prong 1. Prong 2 is do away with PPB. Prong 3 is to put I'm not necessarily going all the way with an HR director to start with, but a competent HR professional, somebody more than a generalist.
Yeah.
To start, to build,
But we still, what I don't know if I see this in this, is the situation that we faced tonight, where we had this excellent candidate come in and had, was worth the amount of money that was proposed that we had to pay with the benefits. That is unfortunate, because, I know that there's other departments in our system that we're hearing, well, we can't get anybody at the rate we have to pay, and so we have to sort of accept what we have, which is maybe.
Yeah.
Southampton really needs to move into the 21st
But I think sometimes that's the easy way out. That's the easy excuse, right? Because I would counter with that. I'd be like, well, okay, if you're a department head and you're telling me you can't recruit for your department because of what we pay, I want to see the last performance reviews that you did on your staff, and I'd like to see exit interviews, and then I'd like to follow up with them. Was that truly the reason? And if it was, then we're trying to adjust it. And
Okay. So that brings me to the next question, and excuse me for not knowing the answer that I should probably have, and that is, do we do performance reviews? Does everybody get a performance review?
short answer is no, and because I'll tell you why. We can't compel elected officials to do the reviews. We cannot compel the Board of Health to do the reviews. We can compel the town administrator and his or her direct reports to do it through him. Like the fire chief
Right.
ultimately is appointed by us, so is the police chief. So we can only drive so far down.
Yep.
And then,
there's no consistency even in those things.
not that I've seen.
There is ways to do it though, because I had this problem in Wellesley where we had, we had elected town clerk, we had all these different boards that had direct authority. But the HR department had one single fund that would, where all the increases for each year were. So if you didn't get a performance evaluation, then you didn't get an increase. So there's ways that.
There are ways to do it, and we can make it a bylaw, right, to compel these boards and, groups that fall under. But now if I'm on their side of the fence, I'd be like, okay, well, show me the review you want me to do. Where's my education on how to do this? Because there again, we have people that are in positions because of their position, but they may have zero management or HR experience.
I think
there's all excellent people on the Board of Health, right?
No, I think
But
there isn't actually a performance review form that the departments are supposed to follow, is there not?
But it's not mandated by, unless mandated by bylaw, we can't compel. We suggest it, we ask, but we don't have the big stick.
And the form doesn't ensure that the process is competent.
Right.
And as John just said, the people that are, like, for example, on the, library board of trustees, good people, but do they know how to do a performance review? Have they got any background in it? And are they
I suspect
doing?
you got a retired HR director on the trustees over there. That seems like a natural place.
Yes.
I'm
Very
kidding.
good. I get you, yes, but.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I also think performance reviews should also be 360, so it's not just a board or committee or an elected official doing them, but to take, the town administrator and the other boards and committees and the water department, and all the other places that, the department touches on a regular basis, but also getting their input. So they may see one specific thing, but they may not see all the others throughout the day.
Right, and in order to do that, we need the resources put in, because there's nobody currently that can just take this on as additional responsibility. And the town continues to grow.
Yeah.
Just like Dan makes the passionate argument every time about conservation and the COMCOM, getting a staff member and planning and all that. Yeah, I agree with all that, but, I'm over on the finance and HR side. There needs to be something over there too, because
That's right.
we're growing.
So the next one is just reviewing and streamlining our hiring process. I think we need to set a goal of, once we get a little bit further down, but, having 90 days should be the average, that when a position becomes vacant, that we get it filled and the person is onboarded. So you have 3 to 4 weeks for advertisement, 3 to 4 weeks for interviews and things like that. And then once that person is selected, 3 to 4 weeks for that person to actually give their notice and come on board. So I really want to set a goal in the future of, how long does it take? And that would also mean giving, managers a little bit of flexibility. So, it might mean if it's between a step 2 or 3, if they're coming on, managers might have that flexibility to decide. If it's between a step 7 or 11, then you would need that checks and balances to really justify that. So, if you had that person out of college that didn't have any experience and they're asking for a grade 11, that needs to be a checks and balances. You know, why is our system broken, or, you know, what's going on here? Why are you asking for such a high salary? And vice versa, you know, a person with that much experience, 20, 30 years, probably shouldn't be at a grade step 1. So we want to make sure that the person comes in at the right level and you know, consistent with their experience and qualifications. So for the maintenance of these plans, it's one of those things that we have to kind of update every single year, even though, you know, we may not be changing the compensation. So we have to separate the actual compensation versus what the plan is. So every year we need to kind of review what the market is, move the midpoint consistent with that, and then readjust everything. And then we can see what our employees are making. Are they lagging a little bit behind, or are they kind of above what the average is? And, you know, do we slow it down a little bit, or do we speed it up? So that's kind of be a yearly task.
So just to clarify, that midpoint would move year to year? Okay.
And then,
I think it's been kind of static, sort of, right?
And then everything's built off of the midpoint or market. So like if it's 15% or 20 or 10% range, that would kind of broaden it.
So that takes you away from COLAs.
Huh?
That takes you away from COLAs.
Right, yeah.
Because your cost of living adjustment is really adjusting that midpoint, and then
Right.
everything else just falls from that.
Yeah.
And that we need to review positions and employees every year, just to kind of do a sample, you know, just to see where they are and if we're falling behind or not, or if we're keeping up. And we want to make progress every year towards the town's compensation philosophy. It's not going to happen in 1 year. It's going to be a multi-year process just to get where we need to be. But we need to make sure that every year that we're working towards that. So for the next steps, I do need to finish collecting the data and putting everything in. You know, the Munson and the Hadley and the South Hadley, that's going to be important just to make sure everything's in there. I have to finish the non-exempt position scale, so the hourly rates, I have to do that. I would like to obtain 2 independent scores for the positions as well. I know I talked to Deb Bradway, and I emailed the FinCom last week about using some of the money for that. She sent out a proposal of $1,200, which would be enough to probably about 30 or 40 hours of work to go through everything and just have a completely independent person that's familiar with the market and the area. And then probably Art would be a good person to ask for another independent. He's familiar, but he's not an employee. And he did the one a few years ago, I think in 2017, based off of this. So he's familiar with it. Once that's done, you know, once we have all the independent scores, we would finalize the rankings. I would have to do a cost analysis to see how much it's going to impact, and then the implementation plan. So if we do have, you know, a highly skilled employee that's very low versus someone that may be a little bit closer to where they need to be, how do we overcome that over the next year or two? And then once that's settled, that's only, you know, the initial phase, but over the next 12 months to review and update all the job descriptions. I know that we did it with the Collins Center, but they didn't turn out great. I think that they also need to be written towards the point factor system to make sure that we encompass everything, and it needs to have one uniform voice. So it can't be something, you know, some people spend a lot of time on the job descriptions and some people just didn't. So there needs to be you have to force them to do that and have a uniform template for everybody. And if we don't do that, then everything's going to be out of whack. And they all have to put the same amount of time and effort into it. If not, then they're not just cheating themselves, but they're cheating the people in the future to do that. And then next year, once all that's done, we'll probably need to do another adjustment and another survey just to see where we are once everything is based on the point factor system and on the market, and just kind of see if there's any tweaks or anything that need to happen.
So between now and 12 months or so, between now and the next town meeting and next budget, when we have to present the next budget, right?
I think that we can, once we do the philosophy, finalize the exempt and the non-exempt, we have that pool of money that we can start making changes to now.
That was going to be my question. I mean, how soon can we actually make, I know you've got an implementation plan there, but I mean, the cost analysis may show, we put aside, I forget, what was it, 20,000?
25, I think?
Yeah.
25,000 maybe, something like that, to start making some of these adjustments, so that we could actually be starting to do that, but the actual cost analysis of this whole exercise might show that it needed 40,000 or something, right? So we could at least make a start on that, knowing that we've still got to do more, but that would not hold people back yet another 12 months, right?
Right, and, you know, depending on how we want to do it, we might want to work on the furthest away from the midpoint first, or do we want to do a general, you know, increase, or?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think in general, I mean, I guess I would feel like we'd want to look at those, you know, once you get all the non-exempt too, just to see how far somebody is off the scale,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We can't do exempt in step one and then wait to get to the non-exempts.
No.
We got, yeah.
So I think, you know, the non-exempt have got to be right up there.
Oh, yeah,
And certainly
absolutely.
those that are way off the scale need to get our attention, I
Yeah.
think would be my first thought.
And some people you mentioned earlier that are non-exempt, I mean, non-exempt should be exempt. You mentioned somebody earlier, yes. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's a good, good start. I'm so sorry that you've had to redo all this work that we didn't get much out of Collins for.
Yeah, but it finally makes sense.
Yeah, it's starting to make sense. I don't, maybe not finally, but it's starting to in my head. Maybe you're farther ahead than I am, but.
Will there be training opportunities for the people that will be doing performance reviews and rewriting job descriptions?
Well, that would have to be incorporated, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
How
I'd
to
like
look
to
at
get
it.
to.
Yeah.
And define who in each various area that doesn't report to the town administrator is responsible for that.
Right, yeah.
yeah, I used to have forms for 360 reviews, and then I would have forms for direct reviews as well, and I always tend to shy away from the numbers and more something that's tangible, so, you know, what are your goals, how did you accomplish them, things like that, rather than just please check 1, 2, or 3.
Right,
Yeah.
So maybe more of a combination of both.
right, okay. Well, any questions, thoughts? from anybody?
Thank you.
It's going in the right direction.
Yeah,
I feel that way too, yeah.
making progress at least, so thank you for putting the effort into that. You can tell what you did with your long weekend. So good. All right. Excuse me. Let us move on briefly here. Deed acceptance, Zero College Highway signing. Are we ready to actually sign that now? I know you said something.
Which Zero College Highway are we?
It's the
talking about?
125, basically. Whichever it is.
The parcels will be listed.
Yeah,
The deed reference was correct in the closing agenda.
I believe so, yeah.
I know so.
Is that you making a motion to authorize the signing?
Is that what we need here?
Yeah, I would, and then I need individual signatures, and then I would have, Lucy needs to just notarize it.
Yeah, this is ministerial, but I will move that the select board is authorized to sign the closing agenda, or the deed specifically, for 117 to 125 College Highway.
Second?
Second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good. This is for the acceptance of the deed for all 3 tracks. NESPA.
3 legal parcels, yep.
Yep. Okay, we'll send that around and sign that.
That's a milestone.
Good, all right.
And the closing date has not yet been established, but it's getting near.
Yeah,
Week
so
of the
Katie had sent
16th.
out to the seller's attorney, just waiting to, they want to
Week
move
of
as
the
quickly as
16th.
possible, but yeah, that's the last step, just to,
So maybe even by our next meeting, maybe?
hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd
the
be
last
great.
thing is to transfer money, and then just all the lawyers have to do their paperwork, so.
Yeah, okay.
Nice.
Sounds good. Glad to see that moving forward, okay. Anything else on that property or that parcel? No? Also?
No, I mean, we're still working on the land use stuff, so.
Right, yeah. And then you've got some of the other documents that we had to look at here, the quitclaim deed, all this stuff is just more for our information? Yeah, okay. All right. Next up, a couple more things. So consideration of initiating the acceptance of MGL Chapter 41, Section 45 and 47, a Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds for Southampton. And I guess between Scott and John?
I asked this to get on the agenda.
Right.
So just relatively quickly. Section 45 titled Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds Membership Powers and Duties. Any city or town except Boston may create a Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds consisting of 3 persons who shall have the management of all trust funds given or bequeathed for the benefit of the town or the inhabitants thereof, unless the donor in making the gift or bequest shall otherwise provide. In cities, the commissioners shall be appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. In towns, they shall be elected in the same manner as other town officers. At the time of creating said board, there shall be appointed or elected one member for 1 year, one member for 2 years, and one member for 3 years, and there shall be appointed or elected annually thereafter one member for 3 years. Vacancies shall be filled by the mayor with the approval of the council or by the select persons. Section 47 authorizes and directs the treasurer to carry out the orders of the commission as revealed. And my purpose of bringing this forward is, as we move forward now, which at least with the Parsons money coming in, you know, where, I guess my questions are, where is that money? Is it being invested? Did we just give it to Bartholomew? What's going on? Maybe it's just sitting in an account. You know, there's potentials of other opportunities for donations to come forward as we move forward with the continuing on the COA issue or on the public safety building issue. There are, especially given this year and what will happen no matter what, changes in tax reasons. It's beneficial for folks to make transfers or donations of stock to the municipality right now for tax purposes. And what I'm suggesting is we're growing, the town is growing, that the old way of, you know, yes, the treasurer is the custodian of all these funds, they hold it. And short of any other laws, they follow the liquidity, yield, or safety, liquidity, and yield factor as spelled out in the law. So locking it up in a money market account at Easthampton Savings Bank at 10 basis points qualifies, because that is exactly what they're supposed to do unless there are other parameters in place. So creating a trust in the commission that would have a public policy and process of how we choose to invest non-tax dollars, non-general fund, right? This is outside the tax revenue receipts. And doing it in a public way with elected people overseeing it or appointed, I think will add transparency, especially as I think there may be a increase in volume coming our way in the next 2 or 3 years.
And encourage people to actually donate.
Correct.
Yeah.
So can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Would these people have to be Southampton residents? And the reason I ask that is because I happen to know that the Housing Trust hasn't been able to be populated.
Yes.
And secondly, I was just going to throw this out because I'm chairperson of the Almoners. Now, that is a very tiny, tiny, tiny gift. It's just really a few $1,000s compared to today's money, but we never know where that's been invested, and had it been invested correctly over the many, many decades, we'd have more money than we do, you know? So anyway,
Yeah, so I would say the way the law says now, it's as we elect other town officials, so therefore, yes, it would require the residency requirement. Now, through research, I don't know, and again, I don't know how much money we necessarily want to spend on this. Could KP point out other areas where other municipalities have been able to alter that? My guess is you're going to need a home rule petition or change that, which draws out another year to make this happen. But we could, I would suspect, we could write the bylaw that underneath this commission could be subcommittees, such as the Almoners, you know, the standalones, like Norris has its own. Right now, it's the Norris School Committee that oversees the gift fund over there.
And the library has a gift fund, yeah.
Libraries are usually touchy in themselves because libraries predate municipalities, so therefore they have their own laws. They could voluntarily come in, but it would be something. But I think creating a standard and setting it out, because again, everybody on the payroll now has more than enough to do. So to add this layer of more stuff in without putting resources into it, and do I think this is the best way to go? No, but this is what the law that's on the books that allows us to do it. And I would say if we were under 5,000, the select board could just do it without going to town vote, but unfortunately we're too big. We should have thought about it 4 years ago.
When we were under 5,000 people? Yeah. Well, and to partly answer Cindy's question, I think you could get from Jen the quarterly report from Bartholomew and get the status of the Almoners Fund investment, because that's where that one would lie.
We've asked.
I can say also to answer John, because I'd asked Jen this a couple months ago, on the fund for Parsons Estate, that had been originally invested in 2 different terms, a 6-month treasury and a 1-year treasury. The 6-month treasury has already come up. It's already matured, and it was rolled over to a 3-month, I believe it is, that's going to actually mature on the 19th of September, so we need to keep track on that. And that was invested at a 5.18%.
Through ESB?
I believe.
Do you remember?
Yeah, through Bartholomew, whatever, I mean,
Well, okay, so. if
I
it's-
think it was, I don't know.
If it's through, so if it's
I don't
through the
think it was
bank.
ESB, I don't think.
So if it's through Easthampton Savings Bank, there's usually no charge to us.
I
If
don't
it's through
think it was.
Bartholomew, they get 75 basis points.
Okay,
And I guess this is where I come in. If somebody wants to make a donation of money, then 100% of that donation should go towards the project.
yeah, I think, I don't know if it was under, I know Easthampton Savings Bank was looked at, but I'm not sure that's where it ended up. I don't know.
Which
that.
only means if it's 5.2, you've got to adjust down to the
Yeah,
real.
yeah, so I don't know that for sure, but,
Right. Because again, I haven't looked at it, but as of last month, any municipal treasurer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts School District has unfeathered access to the MMDT, the Massachusetts Municipal Depository Trust. And as of the close of July, going into August, I stopped looking at it, it's paying 5.6% interest compounded daily. It doesn't cost us anything. So it's using system, but again, we don't, I don't blame anybody for the set it and forget it mentality, because they've got other things to deal with. But
so what would we need to do to appoint, to make this commission?
we'd have to have the bylaw pass a special town meeting in November
Okay,
or December, whenever we meet.
Well, then to get this moving, I move that the select board proceed with the process appropriate for adopting at annual town meeting the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, et cetera.
Could we do it as
A special town?
special town meeting, because then the bylaw gets passed, then at the annual, we could actually have the elections,
Ah,
right? If we wait until then to have the bylaw passed,
At the
then we have to wait for the
town
next,
meeting of any flavor.
yeah.
so we'd have to have a bylaw created, a general bylaw created? Couldn't be a select board policy, it would have to be a bylaw?
Well, that 4145 says, that's what we would adopt.
Yeah.
Is
okay.
4145.
We'd actually adopt it, yeah.
I second.
Okay.
But I
any-
think maybe where you're headed is we have to develop the writing that establishes a hierarchy where all of our existing trust funds do, or for reason don't, fall under this umbrella.
I think the first step is to see if there's an appetite of the citizens to adopt this section, and then let that 3-person committee create the framework and come back.
So in educating the public, we'll have to develop the answer. What
Because
happens
the question
to
will be
the
specifically on the almoners,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing is probably similar to the Whiting Street Fund out of Holyoke. You got to go back to the documents and see what it said there. If the almoners fund specifically said it shall be a standalone for this, then they've got it, the almoners would have to say, okay, we're willing to give that up if we can come in to be part of this. The town couldn't force that issue.
Lots to learn. Thank
Okay, so I think we have a motion for maybe adopting the MGL Chapter 41, Section 45 and 7.
Well, to take all necessary steps
to
to prepare for.
to prepare it for right, to prepare it for special town meeting, whenever special town meeting should be held, before the annual town meeting, to prepare that for consideration by the voters. Is that right?
That works.
All right,
I
and
think.
we had a second, and so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We'll put it before the voters and see what happens. All right, thank you.
Few more steps.
All right. Budget calendar. Scott, I know you were starting to work on that, but fill us in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm still working on the draft, so I don't have
Okay.
it ready yet.
Okay. So next meeting, maybe we'll have more detail on that. Perfect. Okay, thanks. All right, so now we're up to any other business that cannot wait. Hey, Mr. Brett, I think he's still here and he's still awake. You want to come on up for a few minutes and we'll understand your issue a little bit better?
All right. So it goes to my ignorance, I'm still new here. Did that for another couple of years. I inquired about getting additional time, but I thought it was gonna get all lumped into the PCF. I was gonna drag Andrew's stuff into Old Town's business, Collins report, that type of stuff. So I was trying to keep it separate, but All right, so, I said earlier, I'm on an educational tour to bring everybody up to speed because the fate of the water department rests in everybody's knowledge, because everything I can bring to you guys, the decision is in your hands. And I feel like a lot of the information was never brought up, over the past couple of years. Even my own board is, we're all new to try to figure stuff out. We're learning from growing pains. So I handed out one handout already. Sorry, I used names, but that resignation was driven purely because of the slow goat and pony show of the hiring stuff that goes on around here. The Collins report that was handed in very, very quickly after the Collins report came back and was announced that it wasn't going out public and it was going to get rewritten. So, to be quite honest, you're losing a good employee because of the slow process, and it's going to definitely put me at disadvantage because that person, might not have been the polished around the edges, but he had everything it needed to get into this water department every single day, 7 days a week, get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and do what it needed to do to provide clean, safe drinking water. So,
Brett, maybe if I could help you a little bit here.
Yeah, I'd love help.
So primarily because when all this was going down, I chaired the PPB board, so I'm more familiar with this than my contemporaries here. 3 of which weren't here when this happened, right? So I think they're missing some of the background. Like, what caused you to want to go to your predecessor? I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the event was an audit by the DEP that said you couldn't operate with 2 people at the water department. You need to go 3. So that started with the 2 technicians. That job remained open for over 2 years without getting, they continued to get cited by the DEP. And then it escalated to a written citation. So it was just escalating. It was a matter of coming up before we were going to get slapped with something for inadequate staffing working 7 days a week. There's a license component here that because we have our own well and we do our own testing.
So we have our own what?
Our own well
Yeah,
and our own
okay.
testing,
Yeah.
right? You have to have some of these licenses. I don't know if you need to have all 4 right away or you could.
No, so we operate as a treatment 1. That's the lowest of the treatment. It goes up 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're a treatment 1. It's all based on complexity of the treatment system, the process. We're not that complex, so we're a treatment 1. We are, however, a distribution 2 system. That's based on population.
So
Andrew,
go ahead.
Completely separate topic. He's going to come in and cover every one of those
Right.
as a new hire. So my thing here is not the new hire. Right now, it's
Right.
we lost a new employee, an old employee that probably still had 3 years here because of the slow-moving wheels of the Collins report and everything. He lost his steam.
Which was holding.
Go get a job for $6 an hour more than another municipality. Yeah. We are competing for talented, dedicated, smart people with these licenses that are fewer and fewer and fewer. And I'll go into the complexity of how to get these licenses and why we're losing people. Everything from query checks to drug testing to, you can't pass the test. Some people just can't. So this is 2021 when maybe possibly started. This is a sanitary survey that came out from the DEP that said, based on the size of your system, number of employees, you should have 3 people on staff. I believe that's when the process of trying to find additional employees started. Nothing to do with the Collins report.
So the crux of this is the wire department's trying to get authorization to post and to hire for a field tech supervisor. And because that position hadn't currently existed when we started this Collins report problem, it was right or wrong, it was decided to put it on hold until that report came back so we could straighten everything out. No one at that point in time thought it was going to take this long or we were going to run into these issues. So it's still sitting tabled in PPQ's folder. They opted to take no action on it, and it's going to sit there. His course of recourse is the select board has ultimate authority at the end to either deny or approve or do something, but this is his only course to come out and be heard as a department head.
So just to be clear, we need 3 people. We've had only 1 person that you now have the letter from as a field technician.
Yep.
We've just hiring a second.
Right, so
second
before Andrew got brought on board, at the end of the month, I was gonna be a department of 1.
one. Right.
Now, I feel
So he's
set over
coming on
there.
as a technician.
Right.
If
Yep.
this person stayed, this would be a person that you would want to have promoted to the technician supervisor. Is that what I'm hearing?
Field supervisor, at some point, potentially, yes. So
Okay.
my question comes back to Scott, and is the water technician position and the field supervisor position included in the New Collins study?
Field supervisor, no, the water technician, yes.
Not the water technician.
But it's not about just market, it's about setting up a basis so that when those new positions come in.
So we handed in 3 job descriptions: water superintendent, field supervisor, and water technician. In this whole process, it was given back to me, it was returned back, and now it's not in there.
In the Collins or in the new?
Collins or the new one.
Okay.
I guess it doesn't matter if it was in the old one, because we're not
So
using
you
it.
said the field tech is not, the supervisor's not in there, but the field tech is? Is that what I heard?
No, the other way.
The other way around?
Yep.
The field supervisor's in there, but not the tech.
No, the water tech, but not the field supervisor.
Oh, right.
Right, because the water tech was in the,
That was in the
is in the
original,
old
Mm-hmm.
scope that we
There was
were
a job
working on.
description already there
Yes.
for that person, right?
So the field supervisor position is not coming out in your new salary report?
Any position that's open will be placed in the new scale. So even though you
No,
don't do,
I'm not looking, it's a yes or a no, Scott. Is it in the fields, is the field supervisor coming out in the Collins report or the salary compensation study?
yes, all positions will be placed,
Okay.
with graded, all positions will be graded and placed in the scale.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. Because I've heard contradicting stuff, that's why I need to get the answer. So now if you look at the sanitary survey on the highlighted sections, it tells you to, what the DEP recommended. It goes right into safety, workload, and competitive compensation. So even in 2021, the DEP was recognizing that water departments are having a hard time filling positions. And the reason why I bring up the letter of resignation is because I just want it not to be buried, not known. It's one thing about me is I don't mix words. I might not be an eloquent speaker up here, but I will definitely speak the truth and not mix words with everybody. So now, as of tonight, because I didn't know how Andrew's thing was gonna go, this is gonna be additional paperwork, and this is what we're facing as challenges go forward. If we are not staffed, we are mandated to be staffed by a licensed treatment 1 and a distribution 2 licensed person. These were the quotes that came in from East National Water. And this came out during the transitional period when they were hiring for my position as superintendent. They're $165 an hour. So before tonight, when Andrew got approved, I was looking at paying $165 an hour to be in compliance with the DEP and having the right amount of staff people on there. And if you look, they're only given 5 hours per week because that's how busy they are. So.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So I understand the dilemma of this position that hasn't gotten evaluated, and that you're on an enterprise fund and you answer to your board of commissioners. Does your budget provide for 3 employees, or does it not at all
Yes.
provide for 3
It was
employees?
all the way through, it was approved town meeting,
Yeah.
2024 and fiscal year 2025. It's been in the budget, approved.
And that would be for 2 techs, or?
Water technician and field supervisor position. Both positions have been approved and budgeted for.
So there is some
for 2
plug
years.
number for that position,
Right.
and you think that's adequate? What was put forward in the budget is appropriate? if the
Yes, it's pretty
position
close to, I don't know how, it was, that number was
Well, I mean, we
appropriated
don't have
before.
recruiters. You are our recruiting department for the water department. So it is or it isn't. I mean, you've said that you're very frustrated, and I understand that the job description has not been processed in terms of evaluation compared to peer communities. My question was, what's in the current budget? Given that you have substantial autonomy, I hadn't paid a lot of attention. But you do have, if I heard you correctly, the superintendent, the field superintendent, and the tech, all in the approved budget for the year.
Yep.
So we have a process problem with PQB and...
Well, it's because the field placements, the field tech, the supervisor, I'm just going to call it the supervisor. The supervisor's job description, it has been written and is ready, but it needs to be assigned a scale under our old system.
Yep.
And the scale needs to, in theory, one would think, if without having the scales in front of you, needs to be higher than the tech, but lower than the superintendent.
You would seem.
However, the tech's scale is, because this same employee's been in there for 6 years, has been adjusted upward, ramped up for the 2 employee, that it was, his predecessor relayed to us that that's really the supervisor scale, and we need a new scale for the techs, for somebody coming in. But that was preferenced on, if I have a tech, I can take somebody green and train them up. In this case, the previous person that came, our new hire, isn't the green person out of school. They're already up there, so they can, with all the licensing required. It's a different argument. And the pitch to us from the water commissioners at the time and Brett's predecessor was that we just got to figure out a way to give, we can't lose Dennis until we can get, we can't lose this employee until we get somebody else in here. So let's make them a supervisor so we can give them $5 more an hour. And if you think back to the makeup of the PPQ board, that didn't go over well.
Yeah, sure.
And they created all these issues, and really, it shouldn't be that difficult. So I guess my question, Brett, is knowing what you know now, how would you want the department to look tomorrow? A superintendent and 2 techs, or a superintendent, a supervisor, and a tech?
I think for the next year, potentially, till the new hire can get the system, because you just can't, you can see it on a map, but the system's 35 miles of pipes, valves, hiding in the woods, nothing's in the street, everything's off dirt, which is good and bad, you know, it's tough to find some days, and, you know, but good when there's a water main break, you know. So going forward for the next year, I do see the operating like with 2 entry-level,
2 techs.
Type of, you know, and the pay scale, with regards to the
Right,
pay scale.
so the existing pay scale that you have now set for the techs, that you just used to set for Andrew, do you think that that's adequate for you to find somebody? Because you do currently have authorization to have 2 techs on the payroll, without any more oversight from us, other than coming forward with a
Titles
PCF.
would be wrong, or, you know, inaccurate, but the positions, I mean, the salary's there.
On your budget?
Well, yeah,
You mean on your
because, I mean,
budget side?
On the budget side, it's, you know, it's clearly a water technician, field supervisor.
Right. But what you're currently authorized, regardless of what your budget says, what you're authorized to have by the PPQ is 1 superintendent and 2 water techs. And it sounds like you have more money than you need to staff that, because you have a supervisor filled. So the budget issue is neutral, or even beneficial.
Yep.
It's, can you find another person similar to Andrew or less qualified, that current range that you used to set for Andrew would work? I don't know the market.
Yes and no. We've had, since I put it on Indeed a couple months ago, we have had quite a few people come in. A lot of people, just based on Googling our names, are out the door. A lot of people are known agitators, they're out the door. Known, you know, just known throughout the water department worlds.
So it's not it's not a money issue.
It's not a money issue. It's all about finding the right person.
Yeah.
And, you know, I live in town. I want that right person to be in there. I don't want them going out, deal with that tomorrow. I want them staying until, you know.
And it looks like, I'm just looking at the warrant from our Maytown meeting. So I believe the Water Enterprise Fund, we approved salaries and wages for $286,427.
Yep,
That
that's three
covers
different
three
people with budget of overtime,
Yeah.
you know.
And keep in mind, we've gone now 3 months with one position open
Correct.
within this budget cycle.
Yeah.
Can you keep Dennis? Oops, excuse me. Can you
Is there a
can you
chance
keep this-
of keeping the current person?
I guess I'm gonna have to answer that with a question. Scott, when is the new salary compensation study coming out? Because he has packed his go box, and I think the fight is over. I think his fight is over, you know.
There's no guarantee on what it's gonna be at the end. I mean, it could end up being less than, it could end up more. We don't know exactly till the data's in.
Because the budget's
Guarantee anything right now.
I mean, what you heard Scott present tonight is what he's doing in lieu of the Collins Center report that came back insufficient, that we did not accept it and asked Scott to take on the task himself. So
So-
that's why we've had this delay. I mean, that's,
Right.
you know, we didn't want to accept a study that was poorly done and not reflective of the real reality in Southampton. And luckily, we have a town administrator with HR background that knows how to deal with some of these issues. So that's why we're in the process of what Scott has explained tonight.
So a PCF that was approved and rejected just before I started for the field supervisor position was $38.35. Well within my budget, the approved town budget, with significant, adequate time for emergencies, uncalled fors, you know, overnights, weekends, stuff like that. So 38,
But-
35,
and the
but that
reason
was
for the-
rejected because
There's no
that
scale.
position did not exist, right? And so then hence the 18 months and the paperweight of a study. So I have at least 10 different, didn't waste time printing them or handing them out, 10 different job openings that I've talked to other water departments throughout Massachusetts, Paxton, Arlington, Easthampton, right next door, Wellesley, Everett, Yarmouth, Norwell, Paxton again, Westford, all positions looking for what Dennis is leaving now, into water tech position, that have been open 6, 8, 10 months, with comparable pay scales to what we're paying, and they're just not getting filled. So just because we hired somebody today, this issue's not going away. It's gonna be a long, ongoing fight, to continually finding those people out there that wanna come to Southampton to work.
Right. And when, let me backtrack, I want to be sure I'm following the chronology. So when this was presented, the field supervisor PCF was presented, at the time you had this employee in mind, or you were going to be recruiting?
His predecessor. This is all his predecessor.
Yeah, I've only been here 10 months.
Got it.
Yeah,
Right.
all this was they were trying to hire somebody as an entry-level water technician for going on 18 months now. So well before I took on the position, in the hopes that Dennis was going to slide up to a field supervisor position, and we were going to bring in the water technician. Dennis was going to train him. He'd have somebody to, call, somebody to be supervising. So
The person we just approved hiring tonight has a level 4 license, and your leaving employee has a level 1 license, which is sufficient. for our-
treatment 1
Treatment
and a
1.
distribution 2, right? So there's multiple licenses.
So-
in
But that's the
play.
minimum for our requirement.
Right, yep.
And he would be a candidate for supervisory role. Why? Not by licenses, because he's at the minimum for a tech.
Dennis or the new hire?
The departing employee.
He's had 20 years in the municipalities.
And no growth.
18, yep, 18 years.
No growth in licensing or,
Oh, he's qualified to work here, and he's qualified to work in Easthampton. So he has his distribution 1. So Westfield is a treatment 3, distribution 3. Hoyoke's a treatment 3, distribution 4. So it depends on the complexity of your treatment system and
right,
the population, yep.
maybe that was not the right place.
Oh, it's very it's very complex. It's
You've
very
done an
complex.
exit interview, and this person has a job that they are going to.
Has this person got?
Is this person hired somewhere else, and was that disclosed in an
I
exit
don't know.
interview?
There's been no exit interview. That's the only piece of paper.
So we don't really
There's
know.
a position that he had in Easthampton. That is previously up to his 7 years ago, he was employed in Easthampton.
Yep.
But
he chose to come to Southampton.
Came to Southampton.
Right.
Spent 6 years. And then everybody in the water world talks. Everybody knows what everybody else in the in their regular professions own.
So that same job's open in Easthampton.
So right. So if he did put in his position, he may have put in his application, and he could make $36 to $38 an hour, starting on November 1st.
Can I ask what he's making now?
It's off the pay scale because it's
been adjusted for longevity,
It's
right?
been adjusted to longevity, and I think it's one grade above the grade 4 pay scale. So we're looking at just over what the new hire was hired for. So to go back into to some of the reasons why the water world is facing these woes of there's a lot of people that want to just work and they just want to punch a time clock and go home. But that's not the type of world that the DEP will allow the water department to hire. I'll try to keep it quick, but there's four distribution licenses, 4 treatment licenses. We require a treatment 1 and a distribution 2. That's it. To get your treatment 1 license is more difficult to get than your distribution because you're doing a lot of chemistry and stuff. But to get your distribution license, anybody can go take the test tomorrow. It's 100 questions, $103. You go down to Springfield to AMP or go forgot the name of the company. $103, you walk in there, take off your sunglasses, everything you own in a pocket. It's 100 questions, time 3 hours. You have to get a 70 or above. Just because you pass the test, you still can't get your Distribution 1 license issued to you by the State of Massachusetts Drinking Water Board until you have 1 year of experience. 1 year, 40 hours. So even if you work part-time, 20 hours a week, it'd take you 2 years to hand that paperwork in to the State of Massachusetts Drinking Water Board. And those are 9-page applications, query checks, code of ethics, high school diplomas, and then you got to get on the Drinking Water Board agenda and get approved. And so there's a board down in Boston. So now you got your 1, you still don't get it until you have 1 year experience. So you can't hire people in off the street and say, yeah, come on in and work, because it'll be 1 year until they are even eligible to work here now. And if you go back to the sanitary survey, we're required to have those on staff, 365 days a year. And so once you pass the 1, you cannot take the Distribution 2 until you take a 12-week class. The 12-week class is, when I took it, was $993. I think it's up to $1,200. You got to pass that class. And then you get a code, and then you can't take the 2, the 3, or the 4 of the distribution until you pass the D1 and into the 12-week course. So there's more than just, hey, I'm showing up 40 hours a week, I get the licenses. And then you need a letter from your employer stating what your job duties are to accompany this 9-page application.
Could you potentially bring in a second water tech who is somewhere in that process? Like hasn't done it for a year, because both you and the now new employee have the proper licensing to oversee it?
Yeah, so again, we're limited on candidates. We do have potentially one other one. We did interview somebody that passed the treatment 2, but absolutely will not get a treatment 2 license until they work in a treatment plant for 3 years. So somebody to take that person on, you're investing in somebody for 3 years. So it's a lot of work, or it's a lot of, confident that person's going to stay around.
Yeah, after they get their license.
Full circle back to, if you're paying that person, they're happy at their job, they're in a good place, they're going to stay there. And so now, that was the distribution. The treatment is even harder. So for this new candidate to have his treatment 4, you have to take an exam, or you have to take a class, a 12-week class, every single step. So you got to take the treatment 1, you got to take the 12-week class, you got to take the treatment 2, then take the 12-week class to take the treatment 3. So it's and then again, weeding these people out is because Corey checks, background checks, code of ethics, drug testing, high school diplomas, college degrees. They're just whatever happened after COVID. There's just not a lot of people coming back to work. There's maybe people thought quality of life is better than quality of work. I don't know. Living in people's basements. I don't know. Their parents' basements. I don't know where all the people are. But so I had to
If you find
start.
them, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom's
So I guess the question would be, what is it that we as the select board could possibly do at this point in time? I guess I don't know what
I don't see anything. I
what our
know
next
that our
step-
town administrator is addressing the scoring of this new position that's been floating around. The department, thank goodness, just hired a highly competent younger fellow. I think that's fantastic. It looks to me on paper like he's a much stronger candidate to exceed into this supervisory role, and you already have ability to fill another tech to achieve the 3-person coverage. I don't know that there's anything for us to do.
The whole process
We
of
feel
hiring
your
people.
pain and, be the best boss ever and go out and recruit.
So, and that is, I am completely lucky that I got Andrew. His resume was snuck to me from somebody, and he was leaving the water world.
Keep that up.
I did notice on his resume, how did you hear about this? Brett Simmons called me. So I'm like, who else can you call? Just get on the
That's it,
phone.
man. That's it. My kids tell me I talk too much. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So going forward, to say that he does, but he's going to take a solid year or two to learn the system.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that is in the ground, but it's not on paper anywhere.
Right.
But
So
who knows this? You, only.
No,
I don't even know it yet, because I'm sitting at my desk
Right.
all the time. So I come out when there's problems and situations.
So you're asking us to do something about the resignation?
No, I think it's too late. I wanted to bring it to your attention that the slow process of this whole thing, and I understand Scott's working on it. I can't wait for it, because nowhere when you take all these distribution and treatment exams that they tell you how to, address town hall.
Yeah, and
by lack of a better word, fight.
Yeah.
Just come up here and fight to make my job easier.
I think the conversation probably would have gone in a completely different direction if the board took a different vote on Andrew's hiring, right?
Oh,
Because then he would have been a department of one.
Right.
And then that creates bigger issues. So there's a little reprieve here now. But there's nothing that prevents Brett going forward upon identifying, I'll say, a junior candidate or a water tech, wherever they are in the license process. And if they meet all the boxes and that, bringing them on board and continue on that. In the meantime, on our side, we'll make sure to continue to push to make sure the water supervisor job makes it in there, and that the tech makes it in there, and maybe even just like you saw there where there were the 12 different steps, maybe there needs to be 5 or 6 for the water department, just because you're not using them all right now, right? Is there a water tech with no license, or just has this and is working on their first 12 months?
Well, if you look at the sanitary survey, flip it over to page 2, it shows the requirements. And so as the DEP, they're a new staff also. The old school says, they're enforcement. I find that they are becoming better and better with working with people as long as you come to them. So I come every single thing I submit, I say, here's my, here's what I'm doing. The thing with that is I've been on a lot of superintendent roundtables and with Mass Water Works, New England Water Works, that they are creating $80,000 paid salary positions to bring people in from tech schools and high schools. Springfield Water and Sewer is doing this thing called the pipeline. They're bringing in inner city high school kids during the summer to try to get them to say, hey man, if this is something you like, this is a guaranteed job. There's always a demand for it. Going back to my new hire, I think will take 20 years to become what Dennis was. Dennis has a lot of construction experience. So this is what I'm gonna have to, work with. He's been working in the treatment plant. So again, I don't want to misconstrue anything. there's a lot for everybody to learn, and unfortunately, some of the stuff you learn is at midnight, 2 in the morning when something happens. Why is there water coming out? There's not a map showing where it is, like, you know. I'm thankful that I have a great system with highway, and when we have issues, the guys over there, Todd, he's on my staffing plan, but I feel horrible taking him from Randall because he's in the same boat. He's short-staffed, you know. So he comes over, works for our department for the day. That's something that he didn't get done, and then Randall's going to get a phone call because the field isn't mowed somewhere. So going forward, the whole process, I can't wait for this whole process to be fixed. I think the best thing ever would have been that is the HR, you know, part-time, because again, they don't teach you how to interview people, the do's and the don'ts, the what's illegal and what's not. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but sometimes I talk too much. So there's a lot that this town needs to move forward. And so any help that Scott's bringing forward, these new changes are great.
I don't know whether it's worth, another chat with the potential departing employee, just to say that, there is really progress being made, that, we recognize that he's on board until the end of the month, according to this letter, and we'll have another session in 2 weeks, and hopefully have a little bit more detail. I don't know how far we'll be by then, Scott. I won't promise that, but just to say that, there's serious effort working on this, and it's really very unfortunate that it's taken this long.
Right. So, and again, I'm not up here throwing stones. I wanted you all to be aware of the decisions that are made and the slow, dragged out processes sometimes that you lose candidates. And going forward, I'd love the ability for the department head to make some of those changes without having to come through 3-4 different meetings. And when I first started, the water tech position, for whatever reason, it got through editing for 8 months. My first question I had at a water department meeting was, why are we asking for an entry-level water technician position that has a treatment 3 when we're a treatment 1? Everybody's like, it took me 3 months and 3 meetings. Thankfully, and I didn't have to go to the finance committee, but I thought I was going to have to, even though I'm changing a 3 to a 1, and there wasn't even a dollar sign associated with it. So some of the the technicalities need to get the hurdles, the hiring process needs to be quicker, and I go from my own. When I sat in that chair over there, and I realized, I'm like, this isn't just because this 3 water commissioners said, congratulations, come on board. I sat here for, what felt like 2 hours, plus because I was on the camera, sitting in that chair, don't ever sit in that chair. I felt like it was, like it wasn't gonna happen that night. I really thought I was walking out of here, waiting another month, and they were in the same dire situation. I interviewed 2 hours after Tom gone, dropped his keys, his tablets, his phone, and his headaches on the desk, so they were in a tough spot back then. So those water commissioners, just like you guys, you volunteer your time. I would love, for them to have some of the respect that you guys get on their decision making, because they do know a lot of the internal stuff that's going on, and that's why I wanted to bring my box of stuff here and show you guys where I'm sitting, because
I think that's very much appreciated. I mean, to hear all that you're going through and understand that more fully. So we do appreciate that, and we'll do our best to keep the process moving and keep you on board with what you need, because I think, it's very clear that you've got regulations that you've got to abide by, and we've got a responsibility to help you get there.
Right, and these are enforcement, these are, if he didn't get hired tonight, I mean, we're looking at, I don't know how long they take.
This is the first I've seen a DEP letter, and I've been on the select board for 5 years, so I've never seen this letter before.
This is my leg tour of the education, stop, but, I've had anybody will lend their ear to me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming and bringing all your information, and we will keep working on it, promise. Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right.
So before he leaves, is he okay to sit down with the individual who is only going to work till the end of the month and see if there's a way to keep him? To see if there's a way to keep him,
If he's taken another job, I mean, that's a discussion between you and he or the board of the commissioners.
Right. Oh, I've tried. I mean, I've had discussions. I've had him extend his letter 1 more month, hoping that the deadline.
Okay. So we'll let you do what you think is best there. If you think you can approach that again, do that. And
I can't do anything until I come back in here and stand at the podium and you guys say, pay raise.
You need to tell us what he needs. That's what we need to know.
It was a PCF from September of 2023 for a pay raise to move
In order to do what his predecessor wants to do, we have to establish a brand-new pay scale.
Right. The pay scale doesn't exist to cover that
Correct.
position.
Okay, gotcha.
We have
He
the
was
job
looking for a
description.
38, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not on the pay scale, right?
Gotcha.
I believe it was September 23rd, 2023 in the PPB, and it was rejected.
Okay, so thanks. Let us
Thank you.
continue the meeting. Thank you for coming and sharing that
Appreciate it.
information.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thanks, Rob.
My regrets, I'm going to have to excuse
Sorry.
myself.
Okay, sorry. Thanks. Okay, let us continue on. Some of the issues under old business, is there anything in particular, Scott, out of those usual things that has had any update? Capital asset planning will be taking up in cost efficiencies. You've talked about the audit. Green energy is moving along, apparently. So that's working, okay. Let us take up the PCFs then, if we can do that. And
I thought we already did this first one.
Well, I think we did. I think some of these just didn't get signed maybe at the time, because I look at the dates on some of these, so
We got to do the second one for sure.
we'll pick up the first one. We'll see if Lucy wants to come back in, but the
Want me to
first
go?
one,
I'll just do it for formality, but, I mean, I think it's already been done.
I'm sorry.
I think we already voted on the first one, too.
The first one we already voted on
Yeah.
the resignation of Savita McCarthy, so I think this is just a signature that's needed.
Okay.
She resigned in June, so that is just a signature needed on our part. I think the paperwork just didn't follow through. I'll skip the second one. Let's go Tyler Colby.
Motion to accept the resignation of Tyler Colby of the Fire Department effective 8/16/24.
Second?
Second by Cindy. All those approve?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry. Third one? next.
Motion to accept the resignation of Raymond Rodriguez of the Fire Department effective 8/16/24.
Second.
Okay. Second by Cindy. All those in favor?
Aye.
And just a note for the public that may be listening, a couple of these are people that have been on the roster but have never worked a shift here in town. So the fire chief is actually kind of cleaning up his personnel list. They've got full-time employment elsewhere and really didn't have time to do a shift here in town. So that's why some of those are resignations.
Motion to approve PCF of Kyle Rondo, Fire Department, new hire, paramedic, part-time, non-benefited, as needed, $23.29 an hour.
Okay, motion by John. Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Here comes Lucy. So let's do the town clerk one. Assistant town clerk. So we have Cynthia.
Motion to take up the PCF of Cynthia Woodward, Town Clerk Department, Assistant Town Clerk, new hire, part-time, non-benefited, 19.5-hour week.
Up to 19 and a half hours, it should say.
We'll modify the,
On the PCF, it says up to 19 and a half.
Yeah,
Yep.
it should say up to 19.
okay.
On the
I'll
PCF,
cor-
it does.
I'll correct my motion for the record. Motion to take up PCF of Cynthia Woodward, Town Clerk Department, Assistant Town Clerk, new hire, part-time, non-benefited, up to 19.5 hours a week, grade 2, step 13, $22.40, election hours as needed.
And on the PCF, it actually also added wording here that says, shall not exceed $18,460. So that must be the budget that you have
Correct,
assigned
yes.
for that position.
Yep, and Bradley signed off on it, so, yep.
And you've got that available because you've had a vacancy.
$18.46 or $18,000?
$18,460
For the
shall
annual
not,
salary.
the
Yeah.
annual salary, not to exceed that, because that's what the budgeted amount is per now.
Yep.
You want to just give us a little bit of background on Cynthia, or?
She has 25 years of administrative experience. She is a hard worker. She is skilled in data entry, Excel spreadsheets. She has not worked in municipal government, but she's a fast learner. She is very pleasant. When I interviewed her, I connected with her, felt very comfortable with her. And I had a lot of interviews that people did not show up, so.
I was wondering,
and-
did you have a number of applicants for the
Yeah,
position?
we did. Yeah, and there was a lot of no-shows, so, and I need someone in there right away.
Yeah.
So, and she's willing to start September 16th, so,
Okay.
Has she had any interface with the public in her
constant,
position?
yes, yeah, yep.
Looks like she's been a medical billing.
Medical
specialist.
billing, yep, mm-hmm.
But the outgoing individual is 1821, so this is a $4.19 per hour increase.
That's correct, because in the job description, she has to take over for me when I am out. And I feel that the person that fills that position should get paid more than $18 an hour. The assistant treasurer gets paid $25.97.
But you didn't feel that way about the outgoing person? So, I mean, did you change the job descriptions?
No.
Okay.
And this is, again, it's not the assistant to the town clerk, it is the assistant town clerk.
It is the assistant town clerk, yes.
Both positions were. The
Both were,
resignation
yes.
one and-
True, but I'm just
Both
clarifying that.
were, yes.
Any of the other admin type positions are the assistant to, whereas this
Right.
position,
Is
as well
the
as the
assistant
assistant
town clerk,
treasurer,
right.
are the person that's expected to take over when you're out.
Yes, absolutely. That's in the job description,
Right.
Are there,
which wasn't understood by,
I'm sorry.
it wasn't understood, so.
Are there courses that are available to
Yep,
town clerks? and
she's
assistants?
willing to come with me to the conferences to get more up to date on elections and everything that we do as town clerks and assistant town clerks. So yes, there is classes out there.
Okay, so I think we have a motion on the floor. Sorry, did we have a second? I'm sorry.
Somebody
I
seconded it.
seconded it.
Cindy seconded? Okay, we have a motion and a second. And if no further discussion, could I have a vote, please? All those in favor of Cynthia Woodward?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye? All right.
No,
John?
no.
No, okay. So motion passes 3-1 and.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
I appreciate that.
thank you very much.
Motion to take up the Kate DeSanto COA change in position.
Thank you.
Emergency 2-week appointment, COA Director, full-time benefited 32 hours a week, grade 5, step 9, $29.63.
Second?
Okay, any discussion, Scott? You wanna-
I'm not sure I understand what this is,
Yeah.
though. She's been the emergency 2-week appointment already, right?
I'm just reading what's on the agenda, but I'm pretty sure we took that vote already
Yeah, I
to
think
cover
so.
the 2-week
I think,
period,
again, we
right?
didn't sign the paperwork, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's just that the paperwork didn't get signed.
Okay, fine.
Because I thought we took it up at the last
So
meeting.
I would draw my motion.
Okay, I think it's just a
I
signature
don't think we
on
need
that
any act
particular
on
one.
that. Yep.
So
So
that
then,
was for the interim
Yep.
emergency position.
Yeah.
And now we have the actual,
so motion on the PCF for Kate DeSanto COA change in position, Council on Aging Director, full-time benefited 32 hours a week, grade 5, step 11, $31.43 an hour.
okay,
Second.
all right.
My only question on that is the full 32 hours a week, Madam Chair, is that coming out of the general fund?
Yes, it
Not
is.
being augmented at all, right?
No, this is the position, the director's salary for the COA is now funded directly out of the town fund.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just to ensure that my rationality in my head, the 3143 was the budgeted number.
That was the budgeted
Right, we
amount.
don't have
That
to
was
make
the
up any-
same as the departing director.
Yep.
The
Okay.
departing actual director. And there was a small change on the PCF from what I'm seeing, Scott. We had originally had said up to 32, but it actually became 32, not up to 32.
Yes,
And
that's
just to note, on this one, for some reason, it says interim on the PCF, and it shouldn't.
That looks like a note that came from, so
I can't read it totally, but,
I think it was handwritten in a PPB.
okay,
And I don't know why it wasn't there, but we would just want to clarify that in the notes.
yeah. So anyway, so it is the actual permanent position of the COA director at a grade 511, at 3143. And just to say, we have an extensive resume from Kate that we had in our package, actually, last time we looked at her for the emergency. We've got probably over a 2.5 page CV. Kate's been working at the COA for over a year now. She's not only the Shine counselor and she started out as a volunteer coordinator, I believe, became the outreach worker and a Shine counselor, and has been gotten lots of certifications in her various work, a lot of volunteer work with persons with disabilities and aging. She got a certification out of Boston University School of Social Work. She's had over, I think, about 20 years, if I look at her resume, of professional experience in social service and customer care and so forth over at UMass in various positions, from Director of University Events and Special Initiatives, and I think most recently when she came to Southampton, she was ending up, she did 4 or 5 years as the Assistant Athletic Director for Administration at UMass. So she's had high-level administrative management positions and seems to be ready to fall into this position, I think. So with that, any further discussion? If not,
Is there a motion then?
I think John made a motion.
Second.
Second by Cindy. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Thank you. And we'll sign those PCFs. We'll get them all signed this time. Thank you, thank you. And I think that's it for PCFs, if I'm not mistaken. And we have 3 sets of minutes to approve, July 23, August 6, and August 20. I'll take them as a group unless anybody has any particular errors or comments they have on any of them.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, all minutes are approved, thank you. And our next select board meeting will be September 17th. All right, I think that's it, guys.
Just a reminder, I will not be at that meeting.
You'll be
And I-
absent?
And I think Stephen will be absent.
He might
too.
be absent also, okay, thanks, John. So September 17th, but John won't be here, and maybe Stephen won't be here. Okay, so we will be adjourned at 9 o'clock.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.